Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Welcome to the May 2nd,
That wasn't good.
2023 Indian River County Board of County Commissioners regular meeting. We'll start with a moment of silent reflection for first responders and members of our armed forces, followed by an invocation by the pastor Vincent Siegel of the Good Shepherd Church of God. If everybody would please rise. Thank you. Pastor Siegel, are you in attendance? If not, I would ask the Deacon Reverend Wilford Hart to lead us in an invocation and a pledge of allegiance by Commissioner Joe Fleischer.
Let's pray. Father God in heaven, we come before you this morning. First of all, to just tell you thank you for watching over us last night, waking us up in our right frame of mind, and then guiding us to do the right thing, to represent you well. And so we're expecting miracles, signs, and wonders to come right out of these chambers today. And Lord, we just ask that you keep a covering over our leadership all throughout this county. Not just our county commissioners, Father God, but our county administrator and everybody that associated with this organization. Use us for your glory, Father God, in your honor, I pray, in Jesus' name. And every heart that love the Lord will say, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the greatest nation on earth, the United States of America, land of the free because of the brave. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleischer. Wilford, thank you very much for stepping in on that. All right, let's get to the run of the meeting. Next thing we have, Commissioners, item 4, deletions to the agenda of emergency items. I would like to move 7E to 5E under presentations on the derelict vessels. One of the officers from the Marine Patrol is supposed to be here along with
Makes sense.
Eric and company. Oh, he's back there. I see him. Okay. So if that's okay with y'all, I'll entertain a motion unless y'all have any changes.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Second.
Is that Commissioner Moss was a second?
Yes.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer to accept as amended and a second by Commissioner Moss. I'm sorry?
Fleischer, did you want to move item 8E?
Talking to your mic there,
We're going to
Mr.
do that when we get to consent. Sir,
Oh, he's under.
thank you for the...
Yeah, make sure you speak into that mic, especially for
Oh,
the
yes, sir.
disabled people like myself. So, all right, with that, I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer as amended, second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment? Or all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right. Moving on to proclamations and presentations. 5A, a presentation of programs, project, and progress at the Jackie Robinson Training Center. Our Assistant County Administrator, Mr. Zito, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you, Pastor Hart. Deacon Hart. Well,
Next month.
yeah, he's on his way. We appreciate it. So this is an update on the Jackie Robinson Training Complex. I'll be brief. I know we have a lot of presentations today, but I really want to stop and celebrate the journey that we've been on. It could be a very lengthy presentation, and perhaps over time we'll fill you in on additional details. But in 2008, the Dodgers played their last game at Holman Stadium, March 17th, St. Patty's Day. And as we cried in our green beer, we wondered what would become of our beloved Dodger town. Craig Cowan, dear colleague and friend, called upon his once intern at Dodger Town named Pat O'Connor, was then the president of minor league baseball. And Pat came and forged an arrangement with the county where we would convert the complex into a multi-sport training facility. We would host umpire schools and amateur sports training and expand to sports like lacrosse and soccer and build the model as we repaired and improved the facility. By 2012, we realized we had to go in a different direction, although that did save our relationship with the facility. As you know, we were recording Major League Baseball teams at the time in 2008, recording various options to sell, lease, different utilizations of the facility. But ultimately, in 2012, famed owner, Dodger owner Peter O'Malley stepped up, and he partnered with Indian River County to manage the 73-acre facility as a multi-sport stay, play, and train athletic complex and resort, as we would market it in the future. By 2016, and with the guidance of Mr. O'Malley's steady hand, we began laying the groundwork for an agreement with Major League Baseball. By the close of 2018, we came to terms on the amended and restated facility lease agreement as twice amended since then. And under that framework, we began a relationship with Major League Baseball. So we formed an agreement with an initial 10-year term, 10 years and 8 months to be exact, with 2 5-year renewal options. We're now in our 5th year of that agreement and relationship with Major League Baseball. Generally, the terms included Indian River County to focus on deferred maintenance and repair, getting the facility up to speed from its storied past, and with that past came aged facilities. So Indian River County would focus on rooms, roofs, press boxes, concession stands, and Major League Baseball would look ahead into capital improvements to the stadium, athletic fields, a synthetic turf field, indoor training complex now known as the famous 42 building, and ultimately in the future we've designed and are planning for Championship Hall to be completely rebuilt. So under the agreement, the county makes annual contributions for maintenance and capital, which diminish over time according to the agreement. So today, the county's projects are about completed with a few minor exceptions that we're working out. But MLB has invested millions, and their commitment remains strong. So as the county's obligations diminish, the economic impact and tourism impact continue to grow. So now, with a brief presentation on the progress at the complex, I want to introduce my friend and partner over the past 5 years, coming to us from the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, and now batting, the managing director of the Jackie Robinson Training Complex, Miss Rachel Madrigal.
Quite the intro, Mike. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you for inviting me here today. Thank you, Mike, for putting this together. I really do appreciate it. So, as Mike said, I have a brief presentation just to fill you all in on the great happenings over there, a few minutes away, right down the street. Been really excited to been tasked with this responsibility a few years ago to run this place and represent the commissioner's office out of New York, but get to live in Florida and enjoy every bit of what I do. So here's a little bit about what we've had happening. Mouse isn't working. There we go. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to start with some facility upgrades. So a lot of it, as Mike said, was focused on improving the facilities. We inherited great bones, if you will, but we definitely wanted to refresh and make sure that our facilities were up to par to host what I call the next wave of athletes at our facility. So Mike mentioned Building 42. That is kind of our crown jewel now on campus. So if you haven't been there, we'd love to host you out there to see the facility. But that's our new indoor training facility. And that opened in July of 2021. It's 38,600 square feet. It's been a great facility and amenity to add because we all know what it's like in Florida in the summer with those every 4 p.m. Every afternoon rainstorms and the heat that we get in the summer. It allows us to make sure that these great programs that we're bringing in always have a place to train even if the weather isn't on our side. So this is a large facility, has an indoor turf infield, batting cages, 4 batting cages, some classrooms, all the latest technology in AV and so forth, sound systems. So it has been a godsend for us. We knew it would be advantageous to build this facility, but I don't even think we understood the impact it would have in just short, almost 2 years. It's been really neat because even just as recent as last week, we know what poor weather we had over the course of last week. We were able to host Sebastian area Little Leagues, playoff games for their minor and major league divisions. They came over, got to use the facility, so they make sure they got those games in. We've developed a great relationship over the years with Vero Beach High School, so they've used the facility a lot over the last year to make sure that they could get in a lot of their key games and practices as well. So it's been a great addition. Next, we have Holman Stadium. We talked about this a little bit. This has been one of the first pieces that we focused our energies on when we took over in 2019. We recognized that there were a lot of improvements to be had. It was a combined effort with the county and ourselves to get this accomplished, and we hit the ground running. So back in 2019, we replaced the entire playing surface, so brand new sod, new irrigation system, improved drainage on the field itself. We had never had outfield or infield wall padding for player safety, so we redid all the fences around the 360 perimeter, put in new wall padding that year. And since then, the renovations have continued. We started to replace all the seats and finished that, so we have 6,500 new stadium-style seats in the facility. We made all the concrete in the seating bowl safe. There was a lot of issues from over the years of the concrete, so that's coming completely repaired in conjunction with the seating project. Last year, we had a trio of projects that we brought to completion. So we renovated the concession stand as well as rebuilt the press box, brand new structure out there behind home plate. We renovated all 3 restroom structures at the facility. One of them had been abandoned in third base side for years, so we made that a priority as well. And then with the county's support, we were able to renovate the ticket office building as well. So I appreciate your all's partnership on that. That was a big project that got finished back in December of last year. So that's a multi-purpose building that's in right field of the stadium that had been used by the Florida State League Vero Beach Dodgers in the past, and so we brought new life to it. There's 2 clubhouses in there. There's the gift shop, which we completely renovated, the gift shop, and there's a ticket office as well. So that was a really important piece to be able to get even bigger and better events here in the future. These are just a couple of before and after pictures, which we always like to, we're kind of in the grind daily over there at Jackie Robinson, so we like to reflect on, how far we've come, even though we have many more projects on our list that we're aiming to complete. But these are a couple pictures, so you can see a sample of the restrooms that I was talking about. And then we also, we cleaned up the concession stand behind home plate, as you can see, in conjunction with the press box project featured on the right there. And we did some new branding and got the Holman Stadium name on the back there. And then these are some of the other projects that we've been working on recently. So the artificial turf field that Mike mentioned, that was something that was completed last June. So that was previous, we call it field determination. It was one of the original fields at the complex that we've converted to artificial turf right in the central, like the heart of the campus. So full-size baseball field, that's been great. Again, I mentioned the weather. So that field will dry off in 20 minutes after a bad rainstorm. It does have clay mound and home plate areas to maintain that integrity, but that's been a really neat feature for us to have added. And then we've been partnering with you all on the villa renovations, which have been great and are nearing completion. So the county has finished their component of that as of last year. So complete interior renovation has been phenomenal, given a more modern feel, replaced the carpets with LVT flooring, new paint scheme. We did some exterior painting and upgraded the stone veneer, just to give it that new fresh feel that we're looking into, kind of the new wave here, if you will. And then we've been doing some additional upgrades there with countertop replacements. We're doing some furniture upgrades that we're working on this year and so forth to really tie a bow on that project. And then we also did some site lighting upgrades in that area to improve safety for all of our guests, as well as the aesthetic that we just completed. The new project coming soon that Mike had mentioned, which is going to be another crown jewel, is it's a building of many names. It's referred to legally as the Executive Building, but we call it Championship Hall. And we're actually going to be renaming that Building 5, which 5 was Jackie Robinson's Negro League number. So we actually renamed the ticket office building Building 9 after Jackie's minor league number. Of course, we have Building 42 after his his Major League number, and then Building 5 after his Negro League number. So we are going to be demolishing this building. It's actually going to start in a couple of weeks, so this month. And we're going to be creating, instead of the one-story concept, we're going to narrow the footprint and we're going to go up. So we're going to have a two-story concept, as you see featured here. The bottom floor will have this, we have 4 batting cages right now in that facility, so we're going to replicate that to a degree. We're going to have 4 batting cages on the first floor. We'll have a small fitness room. We're going to be moving, we have a concessions trailer in that location right now that's outdated. We're going to get rid of that, and we're going to create a concession stand within the bottom floor of this concept, public restrooms, and then the second floor is going to be really neat, a quad-style meeting design, kind of a modern feel, flexible space for us, as well as some workrooms and breakout areas. So really excited. Again, this is going to be a very unique project, has a balcony, observation balcony on the second floor to 2 of the playing fields. So this is going to kind of complete our central part of the campus that we've been upgrading. So it's the one oddball building, if you go out there right now, that's the one beige color that stands out that, again, we're going to start demoing this month, and it should be completed by end of February next year. And then I just wanted to also kind of let you know what's been happening in the last quarter. We've had a flurry of activity. Obviously, we all struggled with the years of COVID, but we're putting that behind us, and we have bounced back stronger than ever this year. So Mike had mentioned the umpire camp that used to be held here every year by Minor League Baseball. Well, Major League Baseball, since taking over the minor leagues, has kind of redeveloped that concept, right? So Major League Baseball now runs all the umpire programming from the lowest levels of the minor leagues all the way up to the big leagues. And so they redeveloped this program called the MLB Umpire Prospect Development Camp. And so it's very much like we had in the past. It's a month-long program in the month of January where we bring in kind of the next wave of umpires. So MLB goes around the country, and they have these one-day camps where they're scouting new umpire talent, and then they bring them to Vero Beach from all over the country and even the world, some from other countries, and they bring in about the 50 to 55 top prospects to here in Vero Beach at Jackie Robinson Training Complex for a month. And they get to work with the Major League umpire coordinators and advisors. So these are gentlemen who have lots of server time on the umpire circuit in the major leagues, who are teaching these young up-and-comers for 4 weeks straight, and they're finding the best of the best, who's going to stick. And a lot of them end up getting jobs in the minor leagues at different levels coming out of this 1-month program. And others we actually keep here in Vero Beach for about 8 weeks to work our spring training program, which I'll talk about in a minute, to create further development, but they keep having oversight by the major league staff, which is really unique. It's a new program that we developed last year. So this will be an annual event we host every January. And then a couple other events that we've been hosting. So our President's Day tournament, we host 4 of our own tournaments that we run each year, and our biggest is the President's Day tournament. So this year, our goal was to have 65 teams. We had 69 teams. We actually had to cut off registrations at a point. This is a 3-day tournament, and a lot of the teams, most of them are coming from out of state. So they travel really well with their families. It's just a nice vacation away from that cold weather. A lot of them coming up from up north or in the middle part of the country. So they really enjoy coming that time of year. Big traveling parties. Obviously, they're staying in our villas, as well as a lot of off-site hotels that we partner with in our county. So it's been a really big event for us, and it continues to grow. This year was really special. I'm sure a lot of you who follow baseball have heard of it, or even if you don't. The World Baseball Classic took place for the first time in 6 years. Usually it's every 4 years. And that was obviously a global event that's hosted by Major League Baseball, but we were fortunate enough to have 2 of the teams train right here in Vero Beach at our complex. So we hosted Team Nicaragua before the tournament started, and then once Team Cuba came back over from Asia, they were semifinalists, and they did a workout at the Jackie Robinson Training Complex as well. So it's just very interesting. We host from the amateur level all the way up to the pros at our facility. So it's very neat. Like I mentioned, Building 5 that we're going to be rebuilding to be able to offer a lot of this flexible space that can service really any level of athlete is really critical. And then in April was a special month for us. It always is, of course, but we hosted a couple other key events. So we had Team USA and Team Canada, their national softball teams for the 23 and under category. So we are the official training facility of the USA softball national teams. So this was another example of executing that partnership. They did a couple of scrimmages here in early April. And then we were able to, for the third year in a row, we were able to open up our facilities to host the playoff, semifinals and the championships for the middle school teams for both baseball and softball for our local schools. So we love doing that. We have a great partnership that we've been continuing to enhance with the school district. And we held for the second year in a row our MLB Trailblazer Series. This is a very unique one. It's from April 13th through 16th. This is for girls who play baseball, not softball, but baseball. This is something that's key to our development of the sport overall in the world. And so we host that right here in Vero Beach for the young ones, 11 to 13 years old. And we host over 90 female participants. And they get exposure to a very elite coaching staff. The names would blow you away, but a couple of the key ones were Monet Davis. She was, of course, the first female in Little League to pitch a shutout in the Little League World Series. Veronica Alvarez, who's the current national team manager, the women's national team baseball manager. She also is coordinator of Latin American operations for the Oakland Athletics. So we have a lot of trailblazers, of course, on the coaching staff that are then showing these girls in our Trailblazer Series that there is a path for them to continue to get involved in baseball at any level of the game. Pretty phenomenal. And then on April 15th is annual Jackie Robinson Day, and so we always celebrate that. We did for the second year in a row, we had a play ball event, which is our staple program with Major League Baseball, where it's kind of an introductory program for kids so that they, even if they've never gotten exposed to the sport, whether it's baseball or softball, they have a chance to just get a taste for what it's about. And that's so important to us because that's key to our mission, is just growing the game at the youth level. So we partnered with the school district again and got basically sold it out, even though it's a free event. It had 250 kids there and their parents, and it was a really special day, especially because for the first time ever, we had Jackie Robinson's granddaughter. It was his first grandchild, Sonia Pankey, who made a visit here to our complex, and she has never been here before. So I had the opportunity to give her a tour, show off the great facility, and she was just blown away. And just hearing the memories of her granddad and her family, it was pretty amazing. So I'm sure she'll be back. And that really concludes the presentation. But again, I just want to thank you all for your support and your belief in our mission. I mean, I know I can speak for a lot of us who work over there. We spend a lot of times away from our families, and we're all about what we do. And we wouldn't be there unless we believed in this mission. Diversifying the game, really just being out there to serve underserved kids. That's what we're all about. So all these facility improvements, all these other things we're focusing our energies on, it's all about that at the end of the day. So I appreciate everything that you do to back us, and I hope we can make you proud moving forward in the future. So thank you.
Rochelle, I want to say thank you on behalf of the county and the Board of County Commissioners, but also, Commissioners, many of you know that in my spare time, whenever I have some, I do umpire high school baseball. So I've been fortunate since MLB took this over in 2018 to do many tournaments out there. So I've seen the evolution of the whole process out there firsthand. From the grass field, now I umpire on an artificial turf field and stuff like that. And it's really been a great thing to see out there, and they do so many good things. It's all, the tournaments are run first class. You never hear any complaints from any of the teams or any of the players other than they got eliminated or lost their game or they played a bad game, but there's nothing ever, anything about the facilities or how the tournaments run, and it's very rewarding to see being on both sides, being out there as a participant, yet but being as a commissioner to see how successful things are going. Also, I want to say thank you for, which I was instrumental in helping encourage the middle schools and the school board to contact y'all about having their middle school baseball tournaments out there and stuff at the end of the year. And that's been a huge hit. And it draws so many people because you got parents and grandparents and friends and all that stuff that show up. So it's really a big event when they have those middle school end of the year tournaments there. But overall, I think it's a great partnership. I think it's working well. I know things are really busy out there for y'all. It's just been, it's been fantastic. I mean, there's something going on all the time. The lights are on every night when you drive by, and it's really a sight to see. And Commissioner Fleischer, if you ever go to Building 42, you can see how fast your curveball will break and what the speed and rotation is when you throw it. So if you go there, they've got all kinds of high-tech equipment in that building for you to work on your skills.
What's a curveball? I don't know nothing about no.
But other than that, other than that, it's great. Well, you can work on your hitting, you see how fast your swing is, you know, for the bat and stuff, so it's good. I would encourage you to try that once.
What do you use for that?
It's pretty neat.
I don't have a set of clubs. No, but, Mr. Chairman, I want to say that I think Mike and I were the only two that were here when we got the fatal blow that we're not going to have a team. And it was devastating to the board, to the community. Everybody in the community was saying, what are we going to do? I mean, this thing, and we've traveled the journey. And I want to say with great communication and commitment and the relationship, we have the diamond in the rough. And you mentioned the umpires. Folks, I have to tell you what, you have to see this. This is like watching synchronized swimming at the Olympics. You have 50 individuals on the field calling the strikes. It's absolutely fascinating. Then when you got to throw the ball, and I mean, I don't play the game, but I watch these umpires. It is absolutely fascinating, relaxing, and get yourself a Pepsi and or a Coke and just sit there along the fence and just watch them. It is absolutely amazing. Besides all the great events that you've brought here that we've been able to entertain and coach in, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It really has been, you've turned what I call the bitterest lemon into a pleasant lemonade. It really has happened. And looking at the event like the Jawbone Sawbones, which y'all should attend, that's an incredible event too. Each one of these events is rewarding. And as far as tourism, we're putting more heads to beds with the events that you're doing than we were when we had a team. Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
It-
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Yep, only going to
Thank
get
you.
better from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments?
Thank you all.
Anything to that end?
That wasn't a proclamation, but it sure sounded like one, so thank you.
Yes. She deserves one.
Again, thanks so much, and we look forward to even bigger and better things out there. I'm sure it'll happen. That's great. All right, next, 5B, a presentation of proclamation, National Correctional Officers and Employees Week. This will be given by Commissioner Lohr, and here to accept should be Captain Angela Jones, Captain James Hare, Lieutenant John Sereno, Lieutenant Mike Raya, Deputy Chief Kent Campbell. I don't see him, but I do see the sheriff, and Under Sheriff Rowland. Commissioner Lohr.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair, and I'll wait for the group to come down. Mr. Chair and ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to read this proclamation recognizing the week of May 7th through 13, 2023 as the National Correctional Officers and Employees Week. Whereas in 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed the proclamation 5187 creating National Correctional Officers Week, subsequently changed by the U.S. Senate in 1996 to National Correctional Officers and Employees Week. And whereas Indian River County staff of correctional officers, nurses, civilian correctional assistants, and support staff serve in an incredibly arduous and complex environment which they are called upon to simultaneously fill custodial, supervisory, and counseling roles while ensuring the safety and well-being of the inmates within our county. And whereas today's well-trained professional correctional officers and correctional personnel face danger in their everyday lives. And whereas the work of the correctional officers and correctional personnel comes with the broad and challenging responsibility to help inmates develop the skills necessary to become productive members of society. And whereas correctional officers and correctional personnel deserve our show of support as we utilize this week to honor their hard work, professionalism, dedication, courage, and efforts to protect the public throughout the performance of their demanding and often conflicting roles. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by this Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of May 7 through 13, 2023 is designated as National Correctional Officers Week and Employees Week, adopted on the second day of May 2023 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Congratulations, folks. Sheriff, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for that proclamation. I'll tell you, I'm blessed that every day I get to go to work and spend my time around heroes like the folks that are surrounding me right now. And, you know, these folks, every night when our citizens are going to bed, these folks are checking in at the jail and making sure that the inmates are secure, and making sure that our community is secure. And we just really appreciate you guys taking time to recognize the task that these guys take on every single day. It's an incredible task, and Sheriff, when I took over, corrections wasn't something that I was as familiar with, and we've really delved into that through the accreditation process and seen that our folks and our jail is light years above what's happening around the state and around the country. So proud of these folks of what they've done, and they continue to do every day. So we've got a great team, and we're happy to be able to celebrate them next week. We've got a lot of great things planned throughout the week, different meals and things that we do to celebrate our corrections team, but truly a group of heroes, and thank you for taking time to recognize them today.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Commissioners, any comments?
No, just, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, a lot of folks, it's very similar to all of the uniforms that we're looking at in the audience. These uniforms, the public doesn't really understand what has to be done for care, custody, and control, or good service. And I just want to say thank you to the team for your commitment to provide that, because a lot of things happen in your life, and you don't have the opportunity to really, you can't go home and just talk about your day. I want you to get it washed out and talk, because talk amongst yourselves to get that through. And Sheriff, if I could ask your commitment to ensure that they have the opportunity to do that, because a lot of things happen in order to provide for care, custody, and control that they have to internalize, because there's no other outlet out. So I ask you to look over them and to ensure that they have that outlet, so they can release it and then continue the next day and perform that commitment to care, custody, and control. But thank you for what you do each and every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate what y'all do. You play a vital role in the county and our safety and for the law enforcement community in general. And I extend my heartfelt thanks for everything you do each and every day. Madam Vice Chairman.
I just echo everybody's words. Thank you guys so much for what you do. I know it's a tough job, and I'm glad you guys are there doing it. Stay safe.
Commissioner Moss.
I'll echo that. Thank you for your service to the community, and I love the artwork program. I saw that. I think it was on Facebook, and I don't know how that came about, but that's really interesting.
We've got some incredible programs going right now, from the healthcare that was recently featured in the paper that we've got going on, to programs that we're growing. We're starting a farm over there. There's so many good things happening in our jail. It's incredible. Invite you guys over to take a look, and we'll take you on a tour sometime.
Okay, I'd like that. Thank you.
Mr. Administrator, anything?
I would also like to thank you for your service to our community and keeping us safe, and also keeping each other safe and protecting our inmates.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I don't know what we're doing here. I'm sorry. I try to follow the crowd, but it doesn't always work. Thank you. Hey, good to see you.
Go get it.
All right, thank you so much, y'all. Buddy, see you again. Thank you, sir.
Tom. Tom. Thank you.
All right, next.
Yeah.
Moving on to 5C, and I walked in, they were all walking in at the same time. I told them, I swear I'm okay today. I don't feel bad at all. But if you're sick or ill right now, this is probably the place to be.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. All right, next, 5C, presentation of proclamation, National Nurses Week, May 6th through the 12th, 2023. This will be presented by Commissioner Moss, and will present to receive be Cynthia Tagliaferri. I'm not going to do all the DNAP and all the acronyms. So, but she is the Region Director for Florida Atlantic University of the Christine E. Lynn College of Nursing. Will be here to receive along with other people in white outfits. So everybody come up front and come to the podium. Commissioner Moss.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all our nurses here. Proclamation designating the week of May 6th to 12th, 2023 as National Nurses Week. Whereas registered nurses in the United States constitute our nation's largest healthcare profession, and whereas the depth and breadth of the registered nursing profession meets the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings, including the front line of the pandemic, and whereas the American Nurses Association, as the voice for registered nurses in this country, is working to chart a new course for a healthy nation that relies on increasing access to primary and preventive health care and better utilization of all our nation's registered nursing resources. And whereas professional nursing is an indispensable component of the safety and quality of care of hospitalized and non-hospitalized patients. And whereas the demand for registered nursing services will be greater than ever because of the aging of the American population, emerging health challenges, the continuing expansion of life-sustaining technologies, and the explosive growth of home healthcare services. And whereas more qualified registered nurses are needed in the future to meet the increasingly complex demands of healthcare consumers in this community. And whereas the cost-effective, safe, and high-quality healthcare services provided by registered nurses will be an increasingly important component of the United States healthcare delivery system in the future. And whereas, along with the American Nurses Association, the Florida Nurses Association has declared May as Nurses Month with the theme, quotes, "You make a difference." With appreciation for nurses' unparalleled impact during the pandemic and their contributions to healthcare, and an open invitation to thank a nurse for enriching our lives and the world we live in. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of May 6th to 12th, 2023 be designated as National Nurses Week in Indian River County. And during this week, the Board encourages all residents to join us in honoring the registered nurses who care for all of us, not just during this month, but at every opportunity throughout the year. Adopted this second day of May, 2023, by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, and signed by all 5 commissioners. Welcome today, and I would just like to say, not only thank you in behalf of the community, but a very personal and heartfelt thank you. Having spent 3 days at Lawnwood last year after being hit by a truck as a pedestrian, I certainly can appreciate at a very personal level, the importance of the profession of nursing. Because when you're, as you well know, when you're in that kind of situation, the people that you're surrounded with, the people that you see literally every hour of the day in that situation are nurses. And the kindness and the compassion, when you're in that kind of situation, I can't overstate my heartfelt appreciation for everything you do. Just an incredible profession, and I'm very thankful that you chose it.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad that you're here today, of course,
Thank
to
you so
receive
much,
this.
Commissioner Moss. Thank you, and good morning to all of you commissioners. Thank you very much for the proclamation. We're very honored. You know, I want to tell you a little bit about Nurses Week, you know, National Nurses Week. It's designated National Nurses Week to commemorate Florence Nightingale, her birthday, and we celebrate and acknowledge nurses, their tireless dedication, as you know, to ensuring patients feel safe and comfortable, not just their health and wellness, but their safety and their comfort. You know, this year the theme, 2023, the theme is making a difference, and we selected that to encourage nurses, individuals, employers, healthcare professionals, and community leaders such as yourselves to recognize and promote the vast contributions that nurses make. There's 4.2 million nurses across America, and Florida ranks amongst the highest with approximately 188,000 active nurses. They're essential to every healthcare setting, whether it's acute care, hospital setting, surgical centers, ambulatory care centers, even in patients' homes. They take care of every single one of us, and it's, I should say we, I'm also a registered nurse for 25 years. We take care of every single one of us, one another, each other, and all of you. Even with the advent of technology and artificial intelligence in healthcare settings, the very core of nursing, which is caring for patients at the bedside, remains unchanged. And the dedication, the compassion, and the concern for the patients and the patients' families is also, you know, just what nurses do naturally. Joining me today are fellow nurses in this community. I'm thrilled to be here together with Lori McCormick, who is a nurse leader with Cleveland Clinic. They're very prominent in this community, and under the leadership of Dr. Linda Walton, who is this chief nursing officer at Cleveland Clinic, and they are so committed to growing the profession in this community to better serve Indian River County that I'd like to share this declaration with Nurse McCormick and her impressive team of nurses at Cleveland Clinic. And together, we thank you very much today for this honor. Thank you. Would you like to share a few words, Lori?
Commissioners, any further comments?
Thank you.
Madam Vice Chairman?
It's an honor and a privilege to be here today to represent nursing for Linda Walton, our Chief Nursing Officer, who is actually traveling to California for a conference for even more education. So I am here today with my colleagues from case management, inpatient nursing, OR nursing, and my colleagues from the ambulatory nursing sector here at Cleveland Clinic. And it has just been an honor and a privilege to take care of this community. And obviously in the past few years, very difficult times, but this team is resounding and unbelievably resilient. And we just thank ourselves every day to be able to care for this community. And thank you so much for the proclamation. It is quite an honor. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would tell you that just as you heard us tell the sheriff's deputies, you serve a vital part in our society that is probably doesn't ever get enough credit like a lot of healthcare and emergency services folks do. In my career, being a firefighter, paramedic, in my previous career, I went to many hospitals, primarily Cleveland Clinic here, but Lawnwood, Holmes, St. Mary's, numerous hospitals in Orlando. And the nurses always did what nurses do. And be proud of what you do. You're good Samaritans, you're saviors, you're all that kind of stuff for all of us. You're caring for those that are injured or ill by their bedside and for their families. So we appreciate what you do and thank you very much. Commissioner Fleischer, Commissioner Laura, anything?
No, I just want to say
Turn his
thank
mic
you.
on for him.
And,
Turn his mic on.
this recognition is well-deserved. We don't get a chance to see you all that often. I hope, no offense, team, I hope I don't have the opportunity to see you throughout at least the next year, unless you're here at the meeting, because what you do is critical, very much needed, very much important, and requires all of your dedication. And we don't want to be a distraction. That's the only reason why I wouldn't have to go to the hospital. But I say that what you do is very unique. I have a few nurses in my family, and again, what I said, the trauma that you go through every day, you need to vent out. I can't emphasize it enough. I know that you all most of you rode through the COVID experience, and it was quite a tough experience. I know that. And my family members who are RNs could not equate it. You need to find an avenue to equate it, and I hope the organization does do that so that we can have you dedicated to what you do each and every day and not be distracted by what you have to absorb each and every day in order to do your appointed rounds. But I want to thank you for what you do. And again, maybe we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Well, team, thank you. And my daughter-in-law's a nurse, and my two nieces are nurses, so all the get-togethers, we get to hear things, and I always think they're looking at me trying to diagnose me for something. But thank you for everything that each of you do, and God bless you.
Mr. Administrator, anything?
Nursing is very important to me, special to me, because my sister, who's one of my biggest role models, was a nurse, and it just, the compassion and love that each of you convey on a daily basis to the patients means everything, because sometimes it can be very, I know it's a busy environment, and you all take the time to show them care, respect, and dignity, so thank you for everything that you do. We appreciate you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
We're going to do it.
You want to give them the proclamation so they can hold it?
Oh, they have it. This is the next one.
Still got another?
We have to squeeze in some.
What time is it?
Right.
I know it's less than 6 feet.
We can make another row if you want.
Make another row in the front, maybe the shorter folks in the front.
You can go across the street.
Yeah.
They said there was a nursing shortage. I don't know what that is.
I thank you all so much.
Y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Well, today is definitely a day of those that don't get much recognition, and we'll start with the next item, that is 5D. And it's a presentation of proclamation, the Mental Health Association in Indian River County in May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month. This will be presented by our Vice Chairman, Commissioner Adams, and to accept will be Dr. Phil Cromer, the CEO of the Mental Health Association of Indian River County, Amy Wagner, Director of Philanthropy and Marketing for the Mental Health Association of Indian River County, and Laura Saputo, the Clinical Manager of the Mental Health Association of Indian River County, and our own Wilfred Hart back there in the back helping out.
Wonderful, thank you. It's my pleasure to read a proclamation recognizing the Mental Health Association in Indian River County in May 2023 as Mental Health Month. Quote, "Look around, look within." Whereas the Mental Health Association is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that provides a full range of mental health services, including screening, ongoing therapy, crisis intervention, case management, psychological testing, and psychiatric services at the Walk-In and Counseling Center in Vero Beach. And whereas the mission of the Mental Health Association is to provide immediate access with no barriers to mental health care at no cost for Indian River County residents. And whereas in the last fiscal year, the Mental Health Association provided 918 walk-in mental health screenings, served 3,013 students through the Erica's Lighthouse program in the School District of Indian River County, and completed 76 support groups for veterans and first responders. And whereas the Mental Health Association operates 3 peer-run drop-in centers, one of which is in Vero Beach, that provides a safe haven for adults with severe and persistent mental illness, crisis intervention services, consultation with loved ones or family members, provides immediate and long-term treatment options, as well as suggestions to ease symptoms and improve functioning. And whereas, if you or someone you love needs help, the Mental Health Association in Indian River County will provide immediate access to mental health professionals through screening, assessment, and consultation for emotional and behavioral concerns. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the board recognizes the Mental Health Association in Indian River County for their continued commitment to providing residents of Indian River County with timely mental health services, and proclaims May 2023 as Mental Health Awareness Month. Adopted the second day of May 2023 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Dr. Phil, ladies, and Wilford, it's a pleasure to see you here. As you know, this association is near and dear to my heart, and I know you guys are doing a lot of work in the community. Dr. Phil, you want to tell everybody what they can do or how they can access services if themselves or somebody's in crisis, and kind of what you guys have going on?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for the honor. It really is a privilege, and we very much appreciate it. Thank you to Laura, thank you to Amy and Wilfred and others and the entire MHA staff. They really do work tirelessly to provide a full array of mental health services. Our mission at the MHA is to provide a no barriers approach and immediate access to mental health services, and that's what we do. We provide our walk-in counseling center, which provides free mental health screenings. We're in our schools providing Erica's Lighthouse. We have our drop-in centers, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have quite a wide array of individual services, group counseling. We provide services to our first responders, our veterans, and the list goes on and on. If you or someone you love need help, you can just come to the Mental Health Association. You don't need an appointment. It's just a walk-in, and it doesn't cost you anything. We also have funding for those who can't afford ongoing services. So thank you very much, and we're going to continue our good work there.
Thank you. Thank you guys for what you do.
Anything else from anybody? Commissioners, any comments?
Wilfred? Anyone?
Wilfred, nothing?
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Come
very
on,
much.
guys.
There you go. Thank you.
Keep on sliding. Move the whole crowd over.
I know, exactly.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Miss Laura.
Fantastic.
You're a board member? All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wilford is a board member with the Mental Health Association. One of many hats he wears in the community.
All over the charts.
All right, Commissioners, moving on. Now we're going to move 7F up to 5, make it 5E. And this is a derelict vessel process and update. And I'll turn it over to, I believe, our county administrator wants to start this out.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm going to just defer to Eric, and he's going to introduce Officer Mariquin with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. They have a presentation for us today on derelict vessels in the process.
Yes, good morning. Eric Charis, Natural Resource Manager for Public Works Department. We are lucky to have 2 representatives from Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission with us today to go over the derelict vessel process. It's a very lengthy process, and we will definitely be able to garner some additional information from them on this protocol and the process that these boats do go through. So Without going into much additional detail on that, we do have Lieutenant Eller and Officer Mariquin for this presentation or this informational session. And again, we do appreciate the opportunity to move it up from in the agenda so we can get these guys back out on the road. So,
Or in the water.
back out on the water. There you go. All right, thank you. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm honored to be able to speak in front of you guys today. I'm going to go over a brief overview of all the derelict vessels that we have here in Indian River County. So far, we've identified as 16 total vessels. 8 of those vessels are pending removal right now, which means they're out for bid, and we're waiting on the grant money to be sent down to Indian River County here to be approved, and then once a contractor's picked out, those vessels are on the docket to be removed. The remaining 8 vessels that we have, 3 are under investigation. 2 of which we need to dive for, which means they are totally submerged. We have to send divers down to identify the HIN numbers to properly identify them to then locate the owner. We're in the works of coordinating dive efforts right now to get our divers out to find these identifying factors on the boat. Out of that, of the remaining vessels there, the remaining 5, 3 of which are pending a sticker, and the sticker is this sticker right now, right here. If you guys ever see this sticker on any of the vessels throughout the Indian River, this means that it's in our investigative process and it's very close to being approved for removal. By the time this gets stickered, it's a 21-day count that we have to wait for essentially the owner to his last chance to enter into an administrative process with our staff in Tallahassee, at which point that's his last-ditch effort to try to reclaim the vessel for himself. Very rarely does that happen, so if you ever do see this sticker on it, it's very close to the removal process. The remaining 2 out of that are submitted to removals, or submitted for removal, or are awaiting the final approval process through my supervisor, our local captain. So with the 8 that are pending removal, we believe that within the next week we should be able to add 2 onto that list, so we should have 10 total pending removal to be removed from the Indian River in the very near future. If there's any questions specific to any individual vessels that you guys may have, my subject matter expert, Officer Richard Mariquin, I'd like to direct those questions to him. If there's any questions about the grant process, I would like to direct those questions to Melissa and her staff. As far as the process goes, it's a frustrating one. I know for the residents of Indian River County, it's a frustrating one for us ourselves. When we identify a vessel that has become derelict, there's many conditions that contribute to it being derelict, whether it's open to the elements, it has a loss of steering, it's no longer able to power itself and make way for itself. Once we identify 2 of those 3 factors, we're then able to enter it into the derelict process. Many times what we're noticing is people who are going through a housing crisis or something like that are trying to find an easy way out, and instead of living on the streets, they're buying these vessels for $500 from somebody. Unfortunately, because they're buying the vessel for so little money and they have a little money themselves, they're not able to upkeep these vessels, which then leads to them sinking in the river. And then most of the time they abandon them. So we have to go essentially track down people who, for all intents and purposes, don't have a home address or anything like that. Sometimes we're having to go send letters out of state to find these people, wait till they make a transaction in their name that then gets flagged in our system that we can then track them down and send a certified letter to say that we have made every due effort to notify this person of their vessel and the responsibility they have to it. So that's kind of the background on why sometimes there's some longevity in the process, is that we have to go through their Fourth Amendment right to not seize their property without due process. So the due process part of it tends to be what drags out a little bit longer than we would like it to as well. With that being said, do any of the commissioners have any questions about any of the derelict vessels in particular?
No, I just know we're making progress, and I appreciate y'all's help and helping our staff
Yes, sir.
remedy this. It's just, it's something that's needs to be done, and it can contribute to, pollution of the waterway also, and it helps, every little bit helps, and this is vitally important. Plus, when you're out enjoying the fishing or you're out enjoying the waterway on the weekend, you don't want to see a half-sunken sailboat that's not full of treasure or something like that and has pirate flags on it. Other than that, was pretty good. But I appreciate everything that y'all are doing to remedy this. And
Yes, sir.
I assume you're doing it up and down the whole intercoastal for the 156 miles.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Chairman. We cover our area of responsibility is everything 192 south through Indian River County as well. We have For the 16 that we have here in Indian River County, we got probably another 20 or so in Brevard.
I'm tracking total 60 derelict vessel
60.
investigations that I'm currently working.
So there's 60 total in just my area of responsibility. Luckily enough for me, I've been able to decentralize the process, and instead of spreading the effort out among 7 people who aren't able to take the time to become subject matter experts, Officer Merrick Wynn's really stepped up to the plate and took extreme ownership over this situation to make himself our local SME in that realm. So it's been a great help, and I'm very appreciative to his efforts and Melissa and her staff's efforts in working with us to finally get these vessels pulled. And I appreciate your guys' patience in working with us throughout this process as well. I know it's agonizing at times, but we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting very close to it, and we should start seeing these vessels pulled in the very near future.
Thank you.
Well, Lieutenant, I just want to say that while you make explanation for the delay and the 21 days, and then you have to do your due diligence and give it the proper civil process for insurability and recovery, it all is happening a lot quicker than it used to. And I think Eric can attest to that. When a derelict vessel was about in the lagoon for 6 months to a year, and it could not be addressed because of the lack of legal remedy, then I just want to say that we appreciate the new expedited version and all of your efforts while you're conducting other investigations. This is not wholly your job to be able to get rid of these vessels, but it's very complicated, and I do appreciate the expedited manner. About 10 years ago, there were vessels that had been there. There were actually landmarks. I think the Historical Society wanted to put a marker in front of a couple of them because they had been there so long.
Yes, sir.
So now they kind of erode rather quickly due to your efforts. So I want to thank you, and you don't have to explain how long it takes. It's just the public should know that once they see that orange sticker, that things are moving.
Things are moving. That's right. Thank
And
you.
we appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Laurie.
Another thing that we're also trying to push that is somewhat going to help us in the future also, and we've at least done it with one vessel in Indian River County, is the VTIP program, which is relatively new to us. And that's the vessel turn-in program. And with those, we're going out and identifying vessels that are at risk of becoming derelict. So vessels that are open to the elements without the ability to dewater themselves, vessels that have no means of effective propulsion. We're getting those, we're identifying those. Once we can issue that owner or the responsible party a warning, well, it has to be the owner that the vessel is titled to them. But as long as we can give them a warning or a citation for at-risk vessel, we're giving them the brochure and the pamphlet to voluntarily turn their vessel in to the state of Florida, which would ease some burden on them, but it substantially saves both the county and the state of Florida a lot of money. Because when the vessel is floating, it's substantially easier and more cost-effective to have it removed than once it sinks. So that's something else that we're also pushing.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioners, anything else?
Just wanted to follow up.
Eric, you got something?
I just wanted to follow up on this a little bit. I appreciate them explaining some of the processes involved. I do want to let the commission know that as of yesterday, we did send out our grant application to Fish and Wildlife for the removal of those 8 derelict vessels. It's a process now. They're going to review our application. Melissa did a fantastic job putting it all together. We hope to get that and bring that back before the board here for approval. Once we get approval of that grant, then we will be able to move forward with removal of those vessels. So there's still a little bit of a process in between there at this point, but our application is in. And again, just through the cooperative efforts between FWC and the county, that we are at the position of being able to do this now. So these grants we are seeking is full reimbursement of the derelict vessel removals. They do get quite costly, and as you had kind of mentioned, the longer they're in the lagoon, the more deteriorated they are, and then the more costly they are for removal. So we do appreciate the effort from FWC and the officers behind me for making these things move faster. So
Thank you.
that was
Thank you.
pretty much it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, moving on. I know there's no minutes for approval, so we'll move on to information items from staff or commissioners not requiring board action. As told Mr. Zito yesterday, the Indian River County venue calendar of events is full with our Parks and Recreation and other things going on, but Commissioner Fleischer, we didn't get an update on the underwater Easter egg hunt.
We thought it was best not doing it.
Okay, so it went okay.
It, it involves the bunny.
Okay.
Very complicated.
No, but I tell you what, there is a lot going on, and staff's doing a great job, and there's just more and more stuff being created and coming up with new ideas as to stuff going on with all our venues, whether it's anything from the fair to home shows out at the fairgrounds to concerts. It's just amazing what's going on. I'm very proud of our staff, and
Yes.
Mr. Zito, if you'd pass that on to him, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, in 7F, Commissioner Fleischer, I see you have an appointment to the Environmental Lands Acquisition Panel.
Yes, and please, I don't know if my appointee was able to get here and respond there. I did appoint Ms. Janice Broda to this fine collective collegiate organization. And, Mr. Chairman, does that include, or does that complete the appointments, or we still have a few left?
Everything yet?
I'll have mine. Yeah, and I do. Yes, I'll have mine on the
Maybe we
next
get it by the
agenda.
next meeting?
Yes.
If that's possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
So the three of us are done, so we're waiting on the ladies.
it looks like we have some work to be done.
Well, and do we still have to do the at-large members? Aren't there more than just our 5 appointees?
There is.
There were 5 and 2.
5 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Total of 9.
9.
And the other 2, they had a specific requirement?
Yes. Financial, real estate.
Right, the other 2 were,
Right, that's right, we had
had
the
had
additional
professional
other
standards as a qualifier. So if we can bring that back and,
Yes, so.
So we have to do those as well, correct?
yes, so there's 4 additional total, but the
Yes, I
2
would
had
say-
professional standards, the other were they were at large, and then each of us had to appoint 1.
We'll circulate an email that gives you the status of each appointment.
Right, so
Thank you, sir.
if you have recommendations for those other spots to fill, certainly let staff know.
I'm
Absolutely.
proud to know that Ms. Broda was willing to accept, as she'll bring a wealth of knowledge to our fine lands and the disbursement and
All right, moving on
this-
to consent agenda. Commissioners, anything you wish to pull and discuss?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull 8E Echo for discussion.
8E?
8E Echo.
Right.
That was an echo in itself. Okay? See how I did that?
I saw how you did that. Impressive.
Anybody else, anything else? Anybody from the public?
Mr. Chair, move approval as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Moss to approve the consent agenda as amended. Anybody from the public wish to comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner Fleischer, AD, a resolution of support for 43rd Avenue sidewalk from 45th Street to 49th Street.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just pulled item 8E Echo, very excited to approve, but I wanted it pulled for further discussion as it stems back to the Gifford Neighborhood Plan, which we had discussed many, many years ago and were committed to complete. Unfortunately, some of the project requirements got beyond the scope of our capacity, and we're not, historically, we have not committed funding for expansion of sidewalks, for right-of-way purchases, but I want to commend staff for working this through. You might have remembered Mr. Phil Mattson. Phil Mattson and Andy and Brian, And I'd just like them to explain it to the public because it has been well discussed, and it was discussed at the MPO, and I'd like to see it here before the public so we can move on and approve this to get the process moving.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I'm Brian Freeman, MPO Staff Director, and this item before you today is a resolution of support for sidewalks on 43rd Avenue. This will install sidewalks on both sides of a half-mile section of 43rd Avenue from 45th Street to 49th Street. There are sidewalks on both sides of 43rd Avenue south of 45th Street, and in this particular section, there's a sidewalk that, coming from the south, starts on the east side of the road, about halfway up that section of the road, switches over to the other side, and then goes up the west side of the road along the Gifford Community Center. That's an older sidewalk. It's only about 4 feet wide, and there's some sections of it where it's not in the best shape, and so we want to replace that with 6-foot wide sidewalks along both sides of the road for that entire corridor. And then those sidewalks will connect or tie into the 45th Street improvements that are planned continuing west on 45th Street out to 58th Avenue. And the MPO has approved adding to its priorities list a complete street project to put in sidewalks, bike lanes, bus stop improvements for that entire 1-mile corridor. And we are currently coordinating with FDOT to get funding for that project because the scope of the project has turned out to be quite significant with having to basically convert that open canal to a closed culvert design so that we can utilize the canal right away for those improvements.
Brian and Andy, I know you speak to your individuals at FDOT formally and informally. Is this embraceable? Are they excited about this? Is this embraceable? Is it, we can get this on the timeline?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, that FDOT is, everything we've received so far has been positive feedback on the project. I mean, I think it's something that with their emphasis on safety, and obviously safety is a very big part of both of these projects. And, they're going through different programs. One is through what's called transportation alternatives. And so that's what the sidewalk project is. And then the other one for 45th Street is going through our more normal programming process that we do through the MPO. But so far, I think everything is looking, positive for both projects.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, Andy Sopcich, Interim Community Development Director, I'll just add that, this has kind of been a long process through the years where we've been piecing together pieces of sidewalks along 43rd Avenue. And I think this is good, in the context of the 45th Street project because it shows DOT is emphasizing and spending money on other pieces of the network that we're trying to piece together. So I think our crowning jewel will be 45th Street. This is just another piece that's going to be able to get you to 45th Street.
Thank you,
Thank you.
gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, team. Mr. Chair, with that, move approval?
Second.
Any other questions? I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Lohr. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to nothing under public items, public items. We have public discussion items. 10B1. This is a request to speak from Dr. Miles Conway, President, South Beach Property Owners Association, Inc. Request for the Board of County Commissioners to direct a rehearing of the Code Enforcement Board to correct a misapplication of county regulations and mandate of the circuit and trial courts, the 19th Judicial Circuit. And normally we don't take any action on public speaking unless the commissioner wishes to move it forward or take it under their matters in the future. So we just want to be clear on that. With that, Dr. Conway, as soon as you're ready, and welcome.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we're just having difficulty with this port. I'm going to have to just go through the overhead then. Okay. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we can't get the colour overhead going, but
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. You need one for the clerk? You need to give one to the clerk?
Oh, yes.
Here, you have mine. Okay, thanks.
We can share.
We can share, okay, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to address you on this. Commissioners, having watched you on numerous issues related to code enforcement, something that came across in all of the decisions that you've made, whether it has been encroachments, illegal structures, whatever the number of issues that have come before you in code enforcement, there have been 4 common elements. One, consistency with similar code and prior voted decisions of the BCC, precedents that you have either followed or precedents that you wish to avoid, resoluteness with similar code and prior voting decisions of the BCC, and also intent. Those have been consistent, and I'll cite you to a month ago where a homeowner out west wanted to purchase certain property in Indian River County based upon the fact that they had been encroaching on land owned by the county and put up illegal structures, etc. And particularly from the law enforcement caucus of this board, you said, no, we're not going to do this because it sends the wrong message, it's not adhering to our standards, it's not consistent, and we're not upholding the law. So in this case, that was an encroachment issue related to an illegal structures. The issue that I'm bringing up to you today follows these exact precepts that you have set, only it applies to vacation rental ordinances and specifically parking. And that's on page 2. So I got pulled into, unwittingly, being a resident of Indian River County since 1992. This is going on my 33rd year as a homestead resident. I was never involved in any politics until the preemption law that the state applied in 2011 resulted in a quasi-changing of zoning regulations allowing transient boarding houses or public lodging establishments in residential areas. The net result was strife, chaos, and a diminution of property rights in our residential neighborhoods. And as I said, I've never been involved other than in student politics, in any kind of local government politics. However, Commissioner O'Brien, we went to Commissioner O'Brien, a number of residents, and said, could you please help with this law enforcement problem down in the South Beach? And in 2015, Commissioner O'Brien decided to do something. He wrote an email to me, as you can see, and he says, at the February 10th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, I have an item under my matters to request the board to direct staff to draft an ordinance regulating parking rentals. If you can attend, your testimony and that of any other residents will be helpful. Cheers, Peter. That was my introduction to coming to this Board of County Commissioners back in 2015. And the problem that Commissioner O'Brien wanted to address at that stage was this, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sorry I don't have a color version of this, but I think you get the intent. Our residential neighborhoods were turned into tailgate parties akin to the Orange Bowl. And Commissioner O'Brien decided to do something about it. What he did is he instructed, and it's quite serendipitous that Mr. de Braal is here today, he instructed Mr. de Braal to draft up an ordinance. And Mr. DeBrol did exactly that. And basically the ordinance says is if you have a driveway, a stabilized driveway, when it's a vacation rental, you are restricted to 5 cars in that driveway or if you have a carport. And Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Solari, Commissioner Fleischer, Commissioner Zorc, and Commissioner O'Brien unanimously, just as you did the other day with your encroachment, approved that ordinance back in 2015, and Mr. Smith went about making it part of regulations. As part of that, this didn't solve the problem, unfortunately. And a number of residents, particularly my neighbors, Dr. Walter Foreman, a radiologist, who's lived in this area of the South Beach since 1978. He is the patriarch of the community. He wrote, and he was appearing before this particular board and also planning and zoning, and said, many times I have 10 or more cars parked on our mutual entrance property, and it's not unusual to have the drive blocked by parked cars. This has led to my wife feeling unsafe in our home and constant changes of the guard, the horrible noise and disregard of our property, and he addressed this directly to the Board of County Commissioners. So unlike the tailgate party on A1A where you had more breathing room, this is the look of Dr. Foreman's property from his driveway. And Commissioner O'Brien again said, well, we have this parking ordinance. What we now have to do is get rid of the events, because this was the events that was weddings, commercial retreats, etc., you name it. He wasn't the only one in our area that appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. This is Dr. Thomas Gilman. Dr. Thomas Gilman has been there since 1996. He's going on 27 years, and he claimed to the board the same thing. This was a letter that he wrote in 2016. On June the 15th, the rental property had 10 cars present. 6 were in the driveway and 4 more in the grass. This shows, and I hope you also, the disregard they have the neighbors in any ordinance of regulation. Now, these are residents. Now, again, and I address this particularly to the law enforcement caucus on this board, Sheriff Flowers chimed in on page 9. Says, attached is a copy of report 21, etc., etc. This is our 3rd document complaint of violation of section 911. This problem has been going on for 6 months. Please refer to code enforcement for citation of the owner. And it didn't stop there. This was in March of 2021. Sheriff Flowers then took the unusual event on page 10 of your packet, and he wrote a letter to Code Enforcement Division basically declaring this property a nuisance property. Just like you said, no more encroachment, no more building of structures. You've had repeated warnings, no more of this. This is what Sheriff Flowers said. And this was 2 months later. So far we've had residents, now we've had law enforcement, now the courts got involved in this as well. This is an opinion on page 11 of Judge Morgan, because obviously what happens in situations like this before the Code Enforcement Board and other regulatory agencies, let's game the system. Let's try and game the system and have our cake and eat it. So in this particular case, when Mr. DeBrol wrote the ordinance, Mr. DeBrol was quite adamant in this, in the intent and a number of other instances, that once you take out that rental license on that particular property, that no longer is a residential property. It is a commercial transient for-profit boarding house, and you are now subject to the restrictions. And in fact, what happened in this particular case that went before Judge Morgan at the trial court, the attorney for the defendant, or more accurately, the recidivist, said, oh no, I was present with my cars and my family at the time, and therefore I'm exempt from the audience or from the ordinance because we weren't making money as a rental. And Judge Morgan said no, and Mr. DeBrol made a compelling analogy or metaphor. He said that this is very similar, the request is very, very similar to a commercial grocery store operator that takes out a commercial license and runs that operation on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as a grocery store. He then, therefore, cannot invite his family there as a family pantry overnight on a Saturday and a Sunday. And Judge Morgan was swayed very much by Mr. de Braal's argument and said, hell no, you're guilty. And he said, this not only applies in this particular instance where this was a noise ordinance, he said, particularly, among other requirements, parking locations and limits, he expressly put that in his ordinance. And on page 12, you will notice that he found him guilty, but unfortunately, we have a situation routinely that the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Because for all of Mr. de Braal's time in court with another attorney from his office as well, the whole sum total of this was $218 fine when this rental is being rented out for $1,400 a day. So it was like a parking fee. But nevertheless, the precedent had been set. This wasn't good enough to accept that you can't have your cake and eat it, so it was then appealed to the 12th Judicial Circuit Court, and you'll see this on the 13th. So now we have an appellate judge involved. And Judge Merman said contemptuously about the argument that, oh, we're breaching constitutional rights, etc., therefore I can't use my property, etc. And the appellate court ruled consistent with Judge Morgan, says you cannot have your cake and eat it. And with one word, he slammed this down, affirmed. And then Judge Mensa issued a mandate that in future, if you are using your property for personal use, it does not matter in one iota. That property now is deemed a commercial, money-making rental property, whether your family, your grandmother, or your grandchildren are living in it at the same time. So what happened then is, do you think that was a deterrent enough that 3 judges, a police sheriff, etc., said you can't do this? No, that didn't happen at all. So what did they do? On the October 27, 22, another violation for the same ordinance. Again. Then, do you think that stopped them? No. That was, in this particular case, this was for 3 cars. Again, $300 fine. Then came the big one. To this border, and it's ironic because we came full cycle now from Commissioner O'Brien requesting me in 2015 to appear before this board and motivate for that. Now we go all the way now to January of 2022. And Peter O'Brien is chairman, and I write to him and I say, here's 5 PDF files. I can't send them all in one because it's 22 megabytes of forensic photographs of the same ordinance happening over and over and over again. And I send this to Chairman O'Brien. Eventually, in November, a citation is issued for $2,300 for 23 cases of more than 5 cars being parked. 23 cases of more than 5 cars parked. So we've had sheriffs, judges, and code enforcement officers, and this conduct still continues. Does it sound familiar through the chair to Sheriff Lower? With encroachment upon encroachment, building illegal structures, and then saying, oh, can I buy the property to get myself out of this recidivist activity that I've conducted over the last 5 years? So what happens, unfortunately, is we take this before the Code Enforcement Board. And what happens is that the young lady that is prosecuting the case, unfortunately, was not familiar with Judge Morgan's rulings. And one of the board members, Mr. Clements, asked, what happens when a family is living at the residence and we don't, and they're not there, that's not been rented out? And unfortunately, as I said, she was new, she wasn't au fait with the regulations. She said, oh no, that doesn't apply, which was the incorrect decision. So what happened after that is that a letter was issued, that is on page 16. So to correct this, on April the 20th last month, Mr. Sobzak sent out a letter to the property. Oh, and incidentally, as a result of those instructions that the renters, that personal owners using the property are exempt, the Code Enforcement Board did what they thought was the right thing. They said, oh no, you're exempt from using it, and it reduced the fine from 2,300 to 300. So they exempted all of this incorrectly, and that's the purpose that I'm here today. So unfortunately, Mr. Sobczak then issued a letter to the homeowner, to myself, and to the opposing attorney to the effect that this was incorrect, and going forward, if a family is living there at the time when the parking violation occurs, you are not exempt, you will be fined. But unfortunately, and this is the reason I'm here today, is the letter is essentially a de minimis. The letter is too little, too late, and Mr. de Braal has used metaphors about pantries and grocery stores, and I'd like to offer my own metaphor. This letter is akin to a film critic describing the Oscar-winning film Gone with the Wind as a love story amidst a skirmish with unknown protagonists. Too little, too late. For the reasons that you have upheld, this letter and this approach that we're going for does not redress, remedy, how we're going to fix this error, and it was an honest error if you want to look at it. It does not fix the problem that you have fixed before by telling homeowners you cannot trespass on our property, build structures, and then come in and ask to buy the property, namely deterrence. It does not redress responsibility to make sure this doesn't happen again. It does not redress accountability. And most importantly, very importantly, it doesn't issue an apology to the homeowners that have been impacted, severely impacted. And that's what we're asking you to correct today, gentlemen, because what we have now is we always hear, and Commissioner O'Brien used to do this with Mr. Smith quite frequently, what is the tourist development tax? How much revenue have we taken in as a result of allowing this activity? Always the ostensible benefits of the revenue that you're getting, but never the costs. Never the costs are built into that. And as a former economics and finance professor, we always were told our students, look at the bottom line. So I'd like to address you to page 18. Let's have a look at what this board has spent on Mr. de Braal's ordinance and the time and effort that has gone into this. So let's start off with number one, in situ commissioner inspections and board meetings. How many commissioners have come out personally to investigate this problem at this one particular house? That is 3 and 3. 3 commissioners at the time came out to investigate. How many staff departments have been involved in this process of coming up with this order? 3. Code enforcement, legal, community affairs. How many Indian River County sheriffs have we had out there? We've had 2 of them. So how many Indian River County deputies, sergeants, lieutenants, sheriff, inspector calls have we had? We've had 13 deputies out there, 2 sergeants, 1 lieutenant, and believe it or not, 2 sheriffs. The one sheriff sitting up here and the one sheriff in the white suit that came out here, they've been involved in this again at one resident. Now, ironically, because we're on the county line, if you call in these calls on a landline, you get sent to the Indian River County call center. If you use a cell phone, our tower is in St. Lucie County, so it goes over to 911 in St. Lucie County. So we've actually had 2 St. Lucie County sheriffs being involved in this as well. So all in total, 15 deputies, 15 calls, the cost of getting 15 deputies out there. And then, of course, now we have the judicial circuit trials. How many trials, appeals, and county attorneys have been involved, particularly in Judge Morgan's case? So, well, we've had 1 circuit trial court, we've had 2 appeals, and we've had 3 county attorneys being out there. Lastly, and this is the more important one, this is the direct costs of enforcing or coming up, developing, and enforcing this ordinance. Now let's have a look at the human costs. As a result of this down in the South Beach, and we've been impacted by this personally as our board of directors, we have lost Dr. Lee Hoppy, PhD, MDD, in Kansas City Colony. She threw up her arms and she said, I'm sick of this noise, I'm sick of this parking, and she sold her house and she left. That was in 2019. Then we had Mr. and Mrs. Mr. Dan and Mrs. Deborah Murphy in Ocean Oaks West. Similar thing. They said, we've had enough of this. We are not getting code enforcement support on this thing. We are not going to continue to live. They pulled up stakes and they left. And now this one that hurts personally, because he is my neighbor. Dr. Thomas Gilman, this gent right over here, that came before the board, this gentleman over here, that came before the board and pleaded with you back in 2016. He said enough is enough. He put his house up for sale 2 weeks ago after the code enforcement board, because his wife sat over there at that code enforcement board hearing and she saw what happened and she said, we cannot fight this anymore. And they have now sold their house. So I've lost a friend of 27 years. 27 years I've known this man. And now he's gone. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the situation. And what we're asking you to do is very simple. We're asking you to do what you've done before, show your resoluteness, show your consistent respect. You have just respected all of those law enforcement officers here with the proclamation. This is just a manifestation of consistency with that. You have supported law enforcement in the case of the encroachment and illegal building and saying you're not going to get out of this by buying your property. You should not allow a gaming of the system and an honest mistake by a member of staff to tarnish that consistency. We are asking you to do something substantive now. We are asking you to direct the Code Enforcement Board to have a rehearing on this now that they know the opinions of 3 judges. They know the opinions of what Mr. de Braal intended in this ordinance, to call them back into session and impose the remaining $1,000 fine. And hopefully that will now be a deterrent, because nothing has stopped this. Before I lose another neighbor, before I lose Dr. Foreman as well. And he's lived here since 1978 as opposed to Dr. Gilman, who's lived here since 1996. Because the question you've got to ask yourself is, how many more of these residents, these bona fide residents that lived here for decades, are going to be forced out by this activity? And Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to get into this, but the other cost that I omitted from here is the cost of civil watchdogs like myself and a number of other people making the trip that you make, horrendous trip that you make up to Tallahassee. 352 miles and 7 hours of driving to go before the state boards like this, the House Ways and Means Committee that I just went to about 2 months ago, on our dime, not on taxpayers' dime, because all those others are on taxpayers' dime, on our personal dime, to say, please leave our code enforcement boards and our autonomy. Our local Board of County Commissioners and Code Enforcement know how to protect us. How does this look now? How does this look if you permit this type of activity, that I go up there and I make representations at House Senate committees and House of Representative Committee, and you allow this to happen when I say, my guys are doing the job down here, don't meddle with their authority? How does that look if you don't do it for me, if you don't back us up on that? That's just an ancillary thing, because, and Mr. Chairman, again, I'll leave this to you. I'll gladly tell you on what is going on at Tallahassee. Another preemption bill, which was similar to 2011, which got us in this mess, has passed the Senate. It was supposed to go to the House floor, the House version, yesterday, but at 6 o'clock it didn't get there. But by Friday, this will pass on the House floor, and then it's only Governor DeSantis that can stop us from having another attack on these regulations that you've spent all this time and money on. So I said, let's take care of our business first over here with the Code Enforcement Board, and then we'll redress this if and when we get another attack on preemption. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what I would suggest, if Dr. Conway is amenable, is that I meet with Dr. Conway and our new county administrator and bring this back to the board if it's appropriate, under my matters,
Mr. DeBraw?
if you wish.
Counsel?
I mean, if she'd like to meet and bring it back to the board under her matters, that's her prerogative. That's fine.
Commissioner Fleischer, any comment? Commissioner Laura?
No, and as Dr. Conway mentioned, we go back a few years, probably a decade. And, Doc, I will say this, if this was an oversight by a member of our county staff for not knowing, or one of our board members of not knowing all of the judicial matters, that's on us, and we will accept that responsibility. And I will tell you, I don't know about a meeting with Commissioner Moss, but I think this is on us, and I think you can expect better in the future. And I think that will resolve it, sir.
Thank you. I'll convey that to Dr. Foreman to tell him not to leave.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell them
The other one we can't resolve. Sorry, Jim?
Tell them to stand by. We need to do a thorough job.
Yeah, well, it's too late for Dr. Gilman. He's already signed the contract and he's gone. He's going. He'll be out by June 15th. He closes on June 15th. But Dr. Foreman, as I said, who's the patriarch since 1978, that will, the standard that we always apply is egregious. The word that always comes is egregious. If this doesn't meet the bar and threshold of egregiousness, I don't know what, commissioners, what it will do. When two sheriffs and one writes this is a nuisance, I don't know how much lower we can sink on this, but I'll convey that to Dr. Foreman.
We thank you for your time, Doc.
Commissioners, this is my take on this, and Dr. Conway knows my take on this. I've had many discussions with him about this. I was at the Code Enforcement Board that afternoon and saw what happened. Of course, I didn't feel it was proper for me as a commissioner to speak up with and say anything at the time, because what happened was that, yes, there was an error, an honest error by staff member at the time in reference to the code, but there was still a recommendation to fine the building, to find the occupants and the owner of the vacation rental there. It was still done. Yes, it was $2,000 less, but the outcome was still the same. As you all know, I like to use sports analogies. I would tell you that staff fumbled on the 20-yard line, recovered the fumble, had to kick a field goal to win instead of scoring a touchdown. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a lesson learned. It doesn't change the outcome. I don't agree that it was egregious and in a total failure, because the outcome was still the same. And with that being the fact, I'm not prepared, nor do I want to this board usurp what the Code Enforcement Board has done. Those people are all volunteers, and they spend a good almost 5 to 6 hours of their day, once in the afternoon and once a month on a Monday. And they've have been, as Dr. Conway said, fairly consistent, as the commissioners have been fairly consistent on this. And I do believe in the past year, with the addition of some staff in Code Enforcement Board, and my many conversations I've had with Mr. Sobchak when he was overseeing that directly, along with Mr. Mattson at the time, and now with Rebecca, I think our Code Enforcement Board is up in their game on every possible thing that they do in this county. They're actually making money. And for the first time, I don't know, Commissioner Fleischer, as you can remember, or Commissioner Adams, that we have begun as many foreclosures as we have on property. And as many other things that we've done, such as the issue, if you remember, with the dollar store, and the issue that we've had with the Heritage Plantation that have been resolved. I don't see any need for the Code Enforcement Board to rehash this. I understand Dr. Conway's plea, and I understand his situation. I've always felt they've had a definite complaint and something that needs to be treated, and it needs to be treated through the process that we currently have, which is through the Code Enforcement System and through the Code Enforcement Board. I think there are some changes we might need to look at in the future, and I've discussed those briefly with our county administrator, our assistant county administrator, and our county attorney and his staff about some ideas that we're going to look into to maybe streamline and toughen the process. But in this particular junction, it's not my, I don't think it would serve a purpose other than to fine Mr. Dudek another $2,000. if it went back to the code enforcement board and it was unanimous to go with the original fine. I think that's all we're doing.
Well, Mr.
And-
Chair-
And maybe making everybody feel better.
Right, and Mr. Chair, this is public discussion, and we typically don't make those types of movements, so maybe that's why Commissioner Moss wants to bring it back. I'm not sure, but this is a public discussion, it's not a vote here.
I understand that. I'm just telling you that's my feeling, and we don't have to take any action on it. I said that at the beginning of the meeting. If it would be a recommendation, I'm not going to take that as a motion.
I would not take that as a recommendation. It's an effort on the part of one commissioner that wants to reach out to a constituent.
Absolutely.
And if she or he feels the need to bring it back at a later date, that's their prerogative. That doesn't mean there's board action taken on it.
Right. And that's the way I explained it at the beginning of this process, that if the commissioner wishes to take it back before the board and bring it back before the board, we can. Dr. Conway, you're certainly welcome to discuss with our county administrator your
Yeah, and
findings
again, I'd
and
just
and
like
what
to
you would like to
reiterate the
do. But
point.
again, I don't think we're going to take any discussion unless if a commissioner wants to take this up.
I understand that. I just wanted to correct one thing that you said. This is not just about getting another $2,000 fine. This is about a deterrence and precedent. This is preventing me losing more of our boards, members on our board, and other members in the community. Because if you don't get the Code Enforcement Board back in, it sends a message, sends the wrong message, that you can game the system and get away with it. Whereas in the past, you said, in the case of the encroachment and the illegal structure, you can't game the system by buying the property. This is the message. It's not just the money. It's the message, and it's the deterrence, which is not there at the moment. The Code Enforcement Board is no deterrent at this stage. So I'd like to make that very, very clear.
Mr. Chair?
And Chairman Ehrman and I have discussed this. We agree to disagree, but the difference between Chairman Ehrman is he's not at the coalface. I live this. My neighbors are living this. He hasn't lost a neighbor. He's not on the precipice of losing another good neighbor. We are. I've lost more members of our board, 15 board of directors, to code enforcement problems than to COVID. And we're getting to the point on our board where we don't have a quorum anymore because we're losing members. Because I mean, there's other communities that I can go, but I think we spent enough time. I don't want to dwell on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, not just yet. Doctor, we've had the occasion to be working with each other or for each other, at each other for many years.
Yes.
And I want to say thank you for your dedication to your responsibility to be a good citizen and work with the rules at hand. I wanted to bring that up because I'm refreshed that Commissioner Moss wants to work something in her district that would be of concern to you, and maybe perhaps have that discussion, which we won't know anything about until it comes back here, because due to sunshine. So I want to take this opportunity just to look at, you mentioned a phrase several years back, tempered expectations. I think we have to look at the likelihood of, again, something that was not knowingly done or intentionally done, was done without some knowledge, but was not intentionally done to create a harm to you by a board that we empower. They are state empowered, and they are empowered by this board to do the good work, I say good work, of the Code Enforcement Board, and to look at these code violations that our code officers deal with. Well, such being the case, we don't countermand them. We don't change their actions. We actually don't even speak with them. And that keeps the system pure. An error may have been made, but I believe that that error, despite whatever discussion will be, and counsel can correct me, will have to go back, and any appeal of any decision would have to go to the circuit court, not to the board. And I don't know about errors and omissions of that board, so I just wanted you to temper your expectations too. But I think a lot was accomplished today. I think that now, for the greater good, we will do a better job. The board will do a better job, and you have added to the education of the process, and I think everyone's fully aware. So I don't know if the past harm can be rectified and the violator can bleed a little more than they already have bled, which I have to say that I believe that that's the intent, to, really make them ensure that they know that they violated and they should never violate again. I think what they've been imposed with is a reminder, and you know what? A little more to a fine, they could well afford it too, and maybe that's not for me to say, but I don't think that's going to change. I think the change has already been made by you standing at that podium and making it aware and apparent that something has been done that did not rectify the situation or prevent others from continuing to violate your civil rights. Your rights that we enacted here at the dais to ensure that you were in compliance, that Councilor Bill DeBrawl has thoroughly vetted out and written up so that we can have the enforcement. We need a better cooperative effort with law enforcement, the actions of this board, and again, we need you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleischer, for your comments. Now, with regard to your offer of tempered expectations, let me see you and raise you with one. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
Is my counter to that. Now, I appreciate and respect the separation of powers and separation of, and division of labor. All I'm asking you is take this back to the Code Enforcement Board and let them make the decision. They can say, well, we made a mistake, it was an honest mistake, but we're just gonna leave it where it is. Don't preempt their ability to do their authority, to exercise their authority. Let us take it back. Let me make my case again, present it again, and if they decide not to reimpose the fine, that's all well and good. If they decide, oh, okay, this was an honest mistake, but upon reflection, let us just think about this. Despite what the honest intent of the code enforcement officer that presented the case, did this really pass the smell test? That is it right and equitable for a resident and a homeowner to go out and buy a license for a rental and make $2,000, $5,000 on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday? Then say, okay, now I've made my $15,000, $20,000 for the week. I'm going to have a celebratory party with my family over the weekend, and I'm going to park my 20 cars there because now, all of a sudden, and Judge Morgan made this point, you cannot flip the nature of the property on a whim. On a whim, flip it over now, and I take the advantage of that. Mr. DeBrawl, when he presented this before, when he came up with this ordinance, he stood right over here, and there was that great saying that he came up with, and he says, yeah, you are making a lot of extra money on the side. You therefore have to give up some of your rights to make this equitable. Those were his words. Again, reiterate. Let us take it back to the Code Enforcement Board and let them make that determination, because common sense, forget what the lady said, that didn't sound right. That didn't pass the smell test. Had I been, and I have a similar status to apply to sit on the Code Enforcement Board, I would have put up my hand and said, this doesn't sound right. When do we have our cake and eat it all the time? I would have raised that issue and said, my decision that I would have proposed a motion and asked Mr. Clemens to second is, let's table this thing for now. Let the Code Enforcement Officer go back, liaise with the legal department and say, was the instruction she gave us correct? And have done due diligence. They didn't do that. You've said it's a learning experience for you, this board. It should be a learning experience for them as well.
And
I'm
Dr.
saying
Conway,
let them-
I think to kind of wrap this up, I think that's the way it's going to be. There's no mechanism for the Board of County Commissioners to order a rehearing. There's no mechanism for the Code Enforcement Board to summon a rehearing on a matter that's already been adjudicated. The only way to appeal the decision of the Code Enforcement Board would be to the Circuit Court. That would be why one of the interested parties, whether it be the vacation rental or the Board of County Commissioners, neither of which is going to happen at this point. So
Well,
I would thank you.
Then, Mr. Chairman, then we have an inequitable process, because every time the defendant in this case has not agreed with the Code Enforcement Board, they have appealed it to the Circuit Court. As Mr. DeBral himself knows, they have appealed it to the appellate. There's been 2 appeals already. So they can appeal it, but we can't?
I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I know
You're not a party to the
Yeah,
matter.
but you are the party. The
Mr.
Indian River
That's
County
not gonna
can.
happen.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Conway, anything else? With that,
No, that's it.
we're gonna take a break, and we'll move on to the next. We appreciate you being here, and thanks so much. Let's take a 10-minute break. Thank you. We'll bring this meeting back in session, and we'll move on to item C, public notice items, and in 10C1, Mr. DeBraw.
Thank you. This is a public notice of public hearing for May 16, 2023, to consider the establishment of the Oslo Park Street Paving District Municipal Service Benefit Unit and amending Section 200.11 of Chapter 200 Municipal Service Taxing or Benefit Unit of the Indian River County Code.
All right, and 10C2.
Again, we have a public notice of a public hearing to be held on May 16, 2023, to consider an ordinance for the assessment for the water portion of the North County Water and Sewer Project, Phase 2.
All right, thank you. Any questions of Mr. DeBraw? All right, moving on to number 11, County Administrator Matters to be 11A, the request for the use of the Holman Stadium for the annual Sawbones and Jawbones event to be held May 19th, 2023. Mr. Zito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is normally a ministerial item that appears on the consent agenda. However, the captains of the respective teams, the Sawbones representing the local doctors and the Jawbones representing the local attorneys who play an annual softball game for the benefit of the United Way, and traditionally has had to come before the board under our contract with Dodgertown or Major League Baseball, whoever the occupant was at the time. So this is a time-honored tradition of a 15-year annual event. It's a wonderful event. We only put it on under Administrator's Matters today because the captains wanted to thank you in person and celebrate and promote the event just a bit. Unfortunately, they ran out of time and had prior commitments. So Dr. Livingston was here, who many of you know, and Attorney Jesse Larson from the Tuttle Larson firm here on State Road 60 was here to make the request in person. I will pinch hit for them, if you'll pardon the pun, and ask you for a motion and approval, and then I have a comment after the vote. Or any questions you may have.
Commissioners, any questions?
The other thing is, this year we have a little something added to the Jawbones, Sawbones, because, I mean, it's a great opportunity to see the individuals that you have working for you, some in billable hours, some in billable procedures, and this time free of charge. Well, they're giving their fine expertise, and it's always nice because we have doctors and attorneys on the field should there be any anomalies. Everyone likes to watch them, and I encourage the public to attend. But this year, I understand we have a little pregame experience as well.
Yeah, so for the first time, you know, the stadium holds obviously 6,500 to 7,000 people.
Not usually in attendance for this.
We haven't sold it out in the last 15 years. And I will disclose I'm a member of the Jawbones team. So this year we've invited a Little League game to take place before the softball game to bring the parents out and let the kids enjoy the stadium and the concessions and the atmosphere. So that's going to be a nice added touch.
And what's the fee to go to this game?
This is absolutely free.
So it's
Minus your
free?
Donation to the United Way.
If people choose to make a donation.
Absolutely.
But otherwise, it's absolutely free to see their professionals in the community battle it out on the field.
Quite an entertaining game, not necessarily for the prowess of the athletes, and I'll raise my hand for that,
Well,
but it is entertaining.
I don't know how to play the game, but have you watched the Jawbones, Sawbones?
I have.
They actually can play.
I went to one of the early ones, but I'm directly involved in this one.
We have a major announcement this year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's why I was directing attention towards the chairman.
Yes, a celebrity umpire who many of you may know will be behind the plate calling balls and strikes. And
You're going to be right at the...
I'll call balls and strikes, and you know, these attorneys, if they want to interpret the rules, it's my rules on my field, I'll give them one of these, and they'll be gone. These attorneys, you know.
And there'll be no injuries.
I'm going to call balls and strikes, man. I'm the umpire.
Wow. Well, that's more of an incentive for all of us to attend. But I'd like the community to attend too, because it's quite a fun event.
Yeah, so May 19th, a Friday evening, 5 o'clock in the evening, some pregame festivities, and then the two games will ensue.
Thank you.
Sir.
I'm looking forward to it.
You need a motion?
We get a motion to approve?
I just had a question. I'm in favor of this. I'm very happy to support this. In fact, I'll even make the motion if you're ready for that. Oh, you did? Okay, then I'll second it, for purposes of discussion. But I did have a question, since we're waiving the fee on this, but I'm delighted to do so. It's a good cause, and I'm always happy when our residents have the opportunity to use our facilities. But that being said, I was wondering, what is the general policy on this? As you may recall, we had the Vietnam vets request a waiver of fees, and that was denied. So I'm trying to fit it all together.
Thank you. That really segues into my comments that I was going to make after the vote, but I'll just introduce them now. Just to be accurate, there's no fee associated with this granting of the stadium usage. That what's in the agenda item has to be waived is the security deposit, which was intended for large events like Jake Owen concerts and the like. We've had the band Perry, other name acts that pack the stadium. And under those conditions, we have to secure the stadium's well-being. And so that typically comes with a security deposit and some other concessions that they have to satisfy the staff at the complex, that they're not going to leave the stadium in worse condition than they found it. So that's the only thing being waived. In fact, that segues to my comments today that, this is a 15-year tradition. We've held it at other county facilities for different reasons, due to renovations or COVID or what have you. But the Section 604 of the amended and restated facility lease agreement, as twice amended, does state that the county shall be able to use the facility for up to 2 days annually for education, entertainment, and community enrichment purposes. So there's nothing automatic about this approval. They happen to be the only one that came in this year. I recently toured the creators of Steam Fest for potentially a request for next year, but certainly get the word out. We want events that the residents of our county are interested in coming to, again, for education, entertainment, and community enrichment. And so please do not take this as any type of a grandfathered in automatic approval. It has a tradition associated with it, and it's a good cause this year. Next year, we'd like to invite it to be maybe potentially a little more competitive, where we get an event that you all would get behind and perhaps reach out to even more people. But no fees associated with it. We do have 2 a year. That does not include the Harvest Festival, which is also expressly granted through the Section 604. But we get 2 a year. So let's get creative and have another great event.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mike, and just forewarn the attorneys about the umpire didn't take any gruff.
I think the Jawbones have a 3 or 4 year running victory streak. So I'm going to bet on that.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving on to departmental matters. We move down to G in Public Works is 12G1. Indian River County Beaches, Sector 3 and 5, post-Hurricane Ian and Nicole. Mr. Charist.
Good morning. Eric Charis, Natural Resource Manager in Public Works. What I have for you today, this morning, is going to be an update to the board on the Sectors 3 and 5 efforts that have taken place since the impacts from Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. This presentation was provided to the Beach and Shores Advisory Committee back on April 17th at a meeting they had, just as an informational to them as well. So out of this, we're not looking for any actionable item other than continued support from the board on the efforts the county is doing with discussing efforts with FEMA, the DEM, the DEP, and any regulatory agencies. So on that, I will just give you a little bit of a heads up as to where we are. So kind of revisiting, as we know, we were impacted by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. Ian coming in late September and Nicole coming in early November. Those storms did cause a considerable amount of erosion to the dune and beach system here in the county. What I'm going to focus on right now for this part of the presentation is going to be 2 of the county's engineered and maintained beaches, those being sectors 3 and 5. Basically, sectors 3 and 5 are 2 of our 3 engineered beaches, meaning that they have permits obtained for them. They've been designed and maintained, and we have multi-year permits for ongoing nourishment activities. Along with those nourishment activities are extensive monitoring both before and after any activities, and those projects have been going on. We recently completed Sector 5 in 2020, and then most recently completed the Sector 3 nourishment event in 2022, in the construction season for 2022. So again, we currently have permits for these sectors that are valid, that when we get the permits, they are good for about 15 years. We have, I think, about 11 to 12 years left on the permits, basically after we obtain them. What is important to note about our preparation for sectors 3 and 5 is, as I just mentioned, we have had previous nourishment events. When we have a nourishment event, there is multi-year monitoring that takes place after the fact. What that does mean is we have post-construction monitoring that we look at to make sure that we're not doing any impacts to the resources, the nearshore hard bottom, as well as to make sure the performance of the projects and how the projects are performing. It's important to note that because for any future projects in an area such as 3 and 5, the regulatory agencies would require pre-construction monitoring take place in order to identify where those resources are and such that a placement activity would not impact them. Where we benefit here is with our post-construction monitoring that actually can double as our pre-construction monitoring. So items that were brought before the board here back in February, asking for authorization for post-construction monitoring for our sectors 3 and 5 projects now can double as pre-construction monitoring. So we don't have to pull any more triggers on any additional efforts in order to do a potential repair or nourishment events. The county has entered into an agreement or work orders with our coastal consultant to draft up damage assessment reports that will be used to further the county's efforts in receiving or seeking funding from FEMA for losses that were encountered from Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. These reports are in draft format at this point. They have been attached to the agenda item to show what they look at, what they will be looking like, and they do identify different losses that were observed over the sectors. County staff is continuing to work with FEMA and the DEP, along with the Division of Emergency Management, with these reports to identify what kind of funding could be available. These sectors were identified as already being able to receive Category G funding from FEMA, which is for the large renourishment projects. Right now we're working on sand volumes. Where we kind of run into a little bit of a discrepancy is FEMA identifies sand in the system as being sand that's available for the beaches. We did see a significant amount of erosion to the dunes. Some of that sand from the dune system did just move offshore and is still contained within what they would consider the depth of closure, meaning it is still in the system and providing wave run-up dissipation and so forth. So for some of that area there and some of the sand, where we say, where we've observed a loss of 30 feet of a dune, FEMA may not come up with the same numbers, but that is just based on the survey data that they are looking at. So we are working with those agencies to make sure that we have the county's best interest in heart, as well as meeting the program requirements. But again, that is FEMA-driven requirements. So right now, kind of leaning into that, based on the draft estimates we have for the damages that we had seen on sectors 3 and 5 within the hurricane season of 2022, you will see that there is a huge range. That range in there for Sector 3 alone ranges from a dune repair project of $7.5 million up to a full beach and dune restoration project to the tune of $26.6 million. That is what we're working on. We have sand loss estimates, as you can see there, from about 100,000 cubic yards to close to 400,000 cubic yards, depending on how the data is looked at. Again, and that's what we're working with the funding agencies on now to make sure that we can get our best interest at heart here, as well as meet their programs. For Sector 5, you're going to see the same kind of wide variation in estimates, and that is also based on either a dune repair project or a full restoration repair. When we say full restoration repair, that's basically mimicking what was previously done using the same volume of sand that was completed. So for a Sector 5 project, that would take the 2020 project that was completed, look at today's project, and apply a template over it and fill it to the template. So again, that's a big difference between 13,000 cubic yards and 113,000 cubic yards. We have been working with FEMA on that, and we've preliminarily scheduled dune restoration activities for the November 2023 through March 2024 construction period. Again, that's a placeholder for FEMA. It does kind of give them the intent, that the intent is there, as well as motivation to move it forward. Again, with that kind of schedule, that is pending solely on, or pending entirely on, funding being made available. Right now, again, these are still, we don't have project worksheets from FEMA yet. We are working with the agencies on that. We have biweekly phone calls, as well as, been digesting the draft reports as to what the damages look at. Damages, when we do also include in these repair projects, it's not only the sand that is lost, it would also be the dune vegetation. Dune vegetation is a tremendous mitigation factor for future storms, and what we did see there is quite a bit of vegetation has been lost, and that vegetation to be replaced is factored into the numbers that you see above you here in the presentation. That's basically an update on sectors 3 and 5. Again, it is still waiting for ongoing discussions with the funding agencies, but from a position of being able to position the county to do a future project, funding aside, the post-construction monitoring that we do and are doing is in fact positioning us nice to do a project as soon as funding would become available. Any questions on the sectors 3 and 5 update?
Mr. Brown, we don't need to take any action on this?
Not if you don't want to.
All right. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to.
Microphone.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Sheriff for the hard labor and dealing with this, because, quite frankly, it's required. And it's very encumbering. But if you don't do it, we don't get it. And then the citizens suffer. And then we have to figure out where to find funding. So it's a lot of work. I want to say it's well appreciated. And thank you for your commitment to ensure that we get the fair dollars and value that we deserve for the citizens of Indian River County. It's a lot, and keep us updated.
Thank you. And it is a multi-departmental effort.
Yes.
From the county standpoint too. And again, from the immediate response to on the beaches with the regulatory agencies, days after the storm, to where we are now, it's involved many different departments here too. So.
As we've learned with other projects, if you don't perform those post-construction details, sometimes there's a give back, specifically with FEMA.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions of Eric on sectors 3 and 5? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 12G2, Sector 7 Beach and Dune Restoration Project easement status and project options.
Once again, Eric Charis, Natural Resource Manager, Public Works Department. What I have before you this morning is going to be a Sector 7 topic in which we will be seeking a recommendation from or guidance from the board at the end. This presentation supports the agenda item that was in your packet and does also represent a presentation that was recently provided to the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee back on April 17th as well. That group had since provided a recommendation to the board, or had unanimously approved making a recommendation to the board, and that recommendation is included in our options. We have updated the agenda item and this presentation to include the recommendation from the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee. This is a timeline. I apologize about the size, the small font on it. Just kind of outlines where we are in the process and how we got here. The Sector 7 project has been a very lengthy project to get to this point. Starting back in 2018 to go through a permitting process, a pre-construction monitoring process. You can see on this target here that we even went to a bidding process initially. And then prior to the award of bid, that was halted for the fact that we did not have enough stakeholder support in the form of easements for that project to move forward. County Board of Commissioners had set an acceptance rate of about 90% for that. And you can see, I'll hit a couple of more slides in there, kind of show you where we are currently. But you do see that in July of 2026, we went to competitive bid. In September, we only had 50% of the required easements. At that time, we did not award the bid, or we awarded the bid and we were unable to move forward with the construction. We were directed at that point to postpone the project, seek extensions to the funding that we had available to us, as well as for the county staff to continue securing or attempting to secure the remaining easements for a constructible project within the next construction season. I think everybody's aware, but I just want to give you a reminder that construction season for beach projects is limited in Indian River County to be pretty much a November through March timeframe due to sea turtle nesting season here on our beaches. So when I say construction season, I'm actually referring to a November through March timeframe for construction season. So the following year, we brought back an update before the Board of County Commissioners with the status of the easements prior to moving forward with some pre-construction that would be required. At that point, which is about a year later, we were only up to 62% of the easements, still targeting the 90%. Board of County Commissioners, at that point, we were directed to postpone the project, not perform the pre-construction monitoring, once again seek out to the funding agencies and seek extensions to the funding being FEMA, as well as a small portion of DEP funding that we have available for the project. Staff had done that, received the extensions on it, and continued to move forward with obtaining the easements. Once again, in March of 2022, we did the same effort. We brought back before the Board of County Commissioners an update on the status of the easements. At that point, we had increased it from 62% to 66%, still falling well short of the targeted 90%. At that time, we still would need to do pre-construction monitoring, which would start in the May timeframe. So we were coming to the Board of County Commissioners for direction as to whether to move that project forward, do the pre-construction monitoring, or once again postpone the project based on lack of sufficient stakeholder support. We did postpone the project, once again reach out to the funding agencies to secure extensions to the funding, which was granted to us, with that funding being, with the understanding that the funding would be used in the November 2023 through March 2024 timeframe. Brings us to a January 2023 meeting in which we had provided an update on the number of easements that we had, still falling short of the 90%, and a recommendation to adjust easement language was made and supported by the board here. So after that meeting, the revised easement language was submitted to the 27 property owners that had failed to either provide us an easement or denied us, either failed to respond to us or denied easements in previous attempts. That revised easement language was disseminated to those 27 property owners with an initial date of April 1st for return to, it was March 15th with a return to the county for that purpose. We had extended that to April 1st for those easements to come in. At that point, on April 1st, we did receive one easement that was approved, as well as one easement in which the legal counsel for the stakeholder recommended against signing it. So out of those 27 easements, we did get one to move forward. On April 17th, we provided that information to the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee, showing now that we were up to 67% of the easements obtained, once again still falling shy of the 90%. Telling the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee that we would be taking this before the Board of County Commissioners for direction here at an upcoming board meeting, which would be today. At that point, the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee did discuss the topic and had made a recommendation. They are making a recommendation to the board, which is now included as an amended option number 3. And today we are at the staff meeting, the board meeting here, still sitting at the 67% of the easements obtained. Again, some of the efforts that have been undertaken in order to get the easements, we've touched upon this in numerous prior meetings, just letting you know some of the efforts that have been taking place here, as well as through local civic groups as well, have also been involved in some of these efforts to obtain the easements. A little bit of a timeline, you know, a little bit larger font than my previous screen, just pretty much showing where we are in the process. We have currently have 55 of the granted easements. We have that one that is technically, we're considering it in process at this point into the review phase. You know, once that would get approved, we'd be up to about 68, 69%. But we still have 26 properties that we have not received an easement from, reflecting about, you know, 32% of the project area. So we are still falling short of our 90%. Back on that slide, when we do have a pending property, if we have not received a response from the property owner, that property is said to be denied by the time construction goes. We will only be able to do the construction if we have the granted easement. So this slide has been used in previous presentations as well. Kind of a broad overview of what the Sector 7 current design looks like. Sector 7 is about 2.2 miles long, and our placed volume when we originally went to bid back in 2020 would be about 294,000 cubic yards of sand. That volume will adjust based on the current conditions, you know, plus or minus, but again, that's where a lot of the pre-construction monitoring needs to go in and be performed in order to identify what an updated volume would be. But for purposes of today's meeting, we're at about 300,000 cubic yards. What you do see here, though, is the project is heavily loaded with sand in the northern part of the project area. Once again, that's a feeder beach design. That is due to the close proximity of the near shore hard bottom and directions that we received to make the project a non-impacting project. So there are limitations which afforded us that. Our consultant was told, let's load as much sand into the project area to provide as much of a benefit to the project as we can without impacting the near shore resources. So that's where we stand with the current design. Just a little bit more of an update on that. You'll see the image on the left. The red properties are denied. Yellow properties are, you know, pending response. The green properties are granted easements, and the blue property is in process. This is updated as of today. But if you look to the right part of the project, what we're looking at is the northern portion of our Sector 7 project as it's designed. And if you do see the lines that do extend into the water, what those would represent would be either the dune, or not the dune that far out, but the beach berm as well as sloping into the water. So that area there in the northern part would receive a considerable amount of sand, and we're reflecting about 46% of the sand for the entire project would fit in that northern sector. And that what happens is we have a longshore transport of the currents. The sand that we do add up there will eventually, you know, move down and migrate down the beaches and continue to nourish and feed the beaches to the south of it, which is why we call it a feeder beach design. Looking back a little bit here, this is the entire Sector 7 stretch, again with the color coding showing the denied properties. We do see the denied and pending properties. There's a heavier accumulation of them in the north, as well as you know, a little bit more of them in the south. Middle part of the project is, you know, in agreement that the project would need to take place. They have the easements in place that would allow us to move forward, but at this point here, we are well short of our 90% target. Basically, on the modified easement results, I touched upon that on the first slide, but again, when those 27 properties were mailed out, we did receive one owner that signed the modified easement, and that is the one in review. And then one letter was received from the property owner's legal counsel in which they were recommended not to sign the easement. So the 25 other ones that were sent out, we had not received an official response. So those at this point are considered, you know, as denials as far as constructability for today is concerned. I think I touched upon this at one of the previous meetings. The reason why we touch upon this topic now and not in November is because in order for us to go to construction in November, we have to have a lot of steps in place first. Those steps in place would need to take place as early as May. So we are in a period of time now in which pre-construction monitoring would need to take place. The presentation, as I said, was done at a regularly scheduled April 17th BCC Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee meeting. There was a lot of discussion at that meeting regarding the options as presented. Our original options consisted of 3 options that were pretty much mirrored in previous presentations to the board when we were deciding to postpone the project. So those were the similar recommendations. Beach and Shores did heavily discuss one of the options, as well as amended the option number 3, which I'll present to you here shortly. And that was unanimously approved by the Beach and Shores as a recommendation to come before the Board of County Commissioners as their recommendation. So, and that item is included in the agenda as well. So as we start looking at the options, the way that we envision the options at this point here, we do have options ahead of us. Again, knowing that pre-construction monitoring would need to start immediately. But the option number one is seek the remaining easements for the necessary project. Pull the trigger and perform pre-construction monitoring. That is estimated to cost $250,000 to $300,000 based on our annual pre-construction monitoring that we would need to do. Staff would then go ahead and prepare the bid documents in July with a bid opening in September. And prior to the award of bid from the Board of County Commissioners, we would come back with the status and the updated number of easements. Again, we had done this before. It was a considerable amount of cost and effort, only to come back at the time of award and determine we did not have a constructible project. But we have that as an option here on board again. Option number two would be to determine that the project is not going to be constructible this construction period, again, November through March. Do not pursue the pre-construction monitoring. There is no requirement to do that. It's not necessary until we go to construction. We could seek extensions from the funding that we have available to us, again, which is going to be from the DEP as well as FEMA and the Division of Emergency Management. We have been told after our last extension that I believe, had the longest granted extension for Hurricane Matthew FEMA funds. So when we look at our FEMA funding, you got to understand it goes back to 2016. So we've been asking and pushing the can down the street, and FEMA has been working with us, but we are on record now of having the longest extension offered to us for Hurricane Matthew funding. What we would do at that point there is have staff continue to pursue the remaining easements. The 26 property owners that have denied or not responded, we would continue to pursue obtaining easements from them during the time from now until we make a decision as to move forward with the project. But again, we've not been able to make much movement on those, even with the revised language that has been done. So we do have a permit that's valid for 15 years when we got it. So I think we have 13 years, 11, 12 years left on it. So we have multiple years left on the end of the permit. So we are perfectly fine in that. So we could take option number two. Again, no commitment from the funding sources that we would get an extension, though. Option number three is the original option that was presented to the Board of to the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee, was that we were to determine the project not to be constructible at all, based on the lack of sufficient stakeholder support. Basically, at that point there, it would be that we would surrender, tell FEMA that we were not going to be moving forward with the project. It would be surrendering the FEMA and the DEM funds and the DEP funds. And when I say surrender, we have not received them, so it's not like we would be giving them back. We would just say we cannot move forward with the project. I want to be clear with that. Future projects, when we give the money back, future projects may be, subject to being solely funded by the county, as we would be there. The one note, though, is we did receive some insurance funds for Sector 7 losses. So, insurance between the Sectors 3, 5, and 7 beaches, if we did not move forward with a Sector 7 project, it is possible that the Sector 7 insurance funds may need to be reallocated to Sectors 3 and 5, and that may change some of the reimbursements we are seeking for Sectors 3 and 5. Again, these are some variables. We just wanted to make sure that the board is aware of all options that were out there. After that option was presented to the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee, they went at a great discussion on that, whether they were for that option or for option number two. What it kind of is an amended option number 3, which incorporates some items from option number 2, as well as some other recommended strategies for the board to consider. Basically, the Beach and Shores Preservation Advisory Committee's recommendation would be to determine the project as designed as not constructible. We would not move forward with that based on the lack of sufficient stakeholder support we have in that. What the Beach and Shores is recommending, though, is that the Board of County Commissioners here direct staff to pursue, study, and examine what an alternative project could be that could be designed and built that would be feasible. We have an estimate in there from our consultant that effort would be about $10,000. What we would do is Staff would still seek the extensions from the funding, so there's our item from option number 2. We would reach out to the funding agencies and seek extensions to the funding. Again, not being granted that we would be receiving the extensions, but staff would do our best efforts to secure any extensions to the funding. Again, this approach may result in the Sector 7 insurance funds also being reallocated to Sectors 3 and 5, depending on the outcome of it. But this is the recommendation from the Beach and Shores, would be to determine the project not constructible at this point based on lack of stakeholder support and where we are in the process, but to direct staff to determine if an alternative project could be designed that could be built and would be feasible based on where we are. That's pretty much where we are in this. And again, there are 4 options or anything else that could be out there, but that's where we are in the process. And staff is currently looking for direction from the board as to what step to take.
Commissioners, any questions, staff?
Yes.
If not, I'm going to chime in since I've been on the forefront of this for a while, but go ahead.
If you want to go first.
Let me go first, and
Yeah,
maybe
go
I
ahead.
can answer
Go ahead.
some of your
No, that's fine.
questions as to what we're talking about here. Yes, the Beach and Shores debated this. We had a very lively discussion. I'm very impressed with some of our new members on the Beach and Shores, Michael Soul for one, and a few others that are really taking this to actually give us some thought and give us some options on what to do. As you know, as Eric already stated, from the very beginning, when I became a commissioner, I was appointed by then Chairman Fleischer to serve on the Beach and Shores, and we knew that Sector 7 was a definite problem, that we weren't getting the easements, and we wanted to try something different. We approached this with the fact that from the discussions that were had by some of the Sector 7 residents, that the customary use language within the easement was an issue. That customary use language, along with the perpetual language, was changed. The easement was made to be very simple. It's on one page. It follows the guidelines that this is for beach renourishment, for turtles, for turtle monitoring, seagrass, or not seagrass, but native foliage planting on the dunes. And also that we would have to follow the state law, and that for the perpetual aspect of it, it would run with the lay of the land. Run with the lay of the land, it remains in most easements that you have, whether it's FP&L, Comcast, AT&T, whatever one you want to have. That's normal language. Apparently that wasn't good enough. We only got one back. The other one that Eric cited about got back from the attorney's office. That's because the woman involved, I talked to the attorney, Mr. Garris, and because she was an elderly woman, she was in hospice care at the time, and he just recommended not to sign it. So I asked Mr. Garris, I said, Mr. Garris, you have your client there. Can I ask you a question? What do you think about this easement? He says, I frankly don't know why anybody would sign it. But my client cannot sign it right now, but I don't know why anybody would sign it because it is a upgrade to your property. Makes your property value increase, makes it better, makes it somewhat safe. He said, but I just, because of the client's condition, didn't want her to sign it. So basically, that's where we're at. So we only got one back. So obviously, the stakeholders involved don't seem to care, because what really troubles me about this, so we didn't get anything back. We didn't get a paper back with a big cross in it. There's no way I'm not going to sign this thing. We didn't even receive that back. We just received nothing, no answer whatsoever back with the majority of these. So obviously, due to the stakeholders involved, the signing of the original beach easement access is not readily happening. The Beach and Shore recommendation, though, was based on that they did understand that it's not constructible, and because of the easements not being made available and not being presented back to the county. But they took into consideration some other options, and you remember that Mr. Demuth had presented to you about maybe changing the sector boundaries, and stuff like that. And the fact that this beach has some issues, it is an engineered beach, it has been deemed critically eroded, that we go back and see if we can redesign the beach at a cost of $10,000 that's been estimated, to look at this and see if it would work, and then, you know, come back to the board and see what they think. The only thing about it, it doesn't help the getting the easements that we need, and that's what it all surrounds. And you're going to be faced with that with Sector 4 in the future. That's going to come up at a future meeting also with about that, is the easements still aren't being signed. I spoke with Mr. Demuth yesterday, and our discussion came back to that very same items that I've just discussed, the easements, getting the easements done. He said he thinks he can get enough easements to bring in the 80s for especially the folks in the south and not in the northern part, which was in question. I said, I'll bring it to the board and I'll give you 30 days. If it's okay with staff, to give him 30 days to try to seek easements that would bring us up into the mid 80 percentile range if possible, and add that to this. But myself, I am in favor of the Beach and Shores amended option 3, adding, we'll give Mr. Demuth 30 days to see if he can obtain easements and move from there. Because when it comes down to it, that is the bottom line. And I think that staff and myself have tried very hard to get the easement signed, and we weren't successful. And I'm not so sure we can be successful, but yet the project is like I said, I can read it to you, determined to be not constructible at all based on the lack of sufficient stakeholder support. Per the Beach and Shore recommendation, direct staff to examine what an alternative project could be that could be designed and built that was feasible. This approach may require that both FEMA funding and the DEEP funding grants be surrendered by the county, and any future project might be sought would be subject to being funded solely. And we don't want to run into that. We want to see if we can get the extension. But if everything goes south, Rich and I have spoke also about this, maybe this funding can be used for another beach project. It doesn't hurt to ask FEMA and DEP about this. But so now that I've made that all perfectly clear, I'm sure, I would recommend that we go to the option 3 and allow Mr. Demuth 30 days to seek easements.
Mr. Chair, as you pointed out, Commissioner Adams and myself have had the luxury, opportunity, and honor of working with the Beach and Shores Committee for several years. And I believe this past experience with you involved at the Beach and Shores has been, well, lack of a better term, it's been the most challenging because of this whole issue. And I want to say thank you to the Beach and Shores Committee and yourself for taking it. I understand that there was a meeting that lasted well into the evening on this decision. And I guess there was a fruit. And I think it would be disingenuous not to take a look at that and go with that option. And as well as I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Demuth, and to add that as well, this has been a few years of looking at adapt and overcome, adjustment, trying to get where we needed to get to, a tremendous resistance factor for a certain group population for other reasons, for beach nourishment. I didn't understand it at first. I well understand it now, and I believe that if Mr. Demuth has the plan intact, I think that we should afford the opportunity for that to occur. I mean, it's a minimal time period. It's not kicking the can way down the road. It's giving it another 30 days, and if that's the case, it would be brought back to Beach and Shores and working with staff to see if we can bear a little bit more fruit from the trees, and possibly go forward.
Just to clarify, though, I mean, the additional time frame here, we would not be able to go through construction this November. I mean, we're
Right.
beyond the drop dead date. I'm just
We're
saying-
beyond.
Exactly. So, I mean, this effort, fine, the 30 days, but we would not be able to go to construction in November of 2023. The 30-day process would position us to go to construction in November of 2024.
It won't allow you to go into construction?
We have, the pre-construction monitoring needs to take place. We had come.
30 day, we couldn't, I know we're asking y'all to do more and more. There's no way?
There's no way we could work the pre-construction monitoring as we're attempting to
Well, I mean,
secure
and we're
a little bit more
looking
real
to pull the
estate.
trigger on $250,000 and given the green light for the pre-construction monitoring while he's collecting is, I guess that's the question I have. That's almost like option number one at that point, which was to, do the pre-construction monitoring and then look to coming before the board, at the time of award of bid and determine whether we had enough to move forward. And we had done that the first year, and that cost, $250,000 to do the pre-construction monitoring, only to find out that we did not have a constructible project.
We could place ourselves in more of a dilemma by going with option one, not being consistent with the Beach and Shores decision and recommendation. And if we were to include that and work with going forward, it could be very costly for naught.
Correct.
Is that what you suggest?
I'm just saying that it has been done in the past in which we did the pre-construction monitoring while we were trying to get the easements. And we spent, county funds had spent, in excess of $250,000 for something that is now a placeholder on the shelf because it cannot be used for anything.
What if we went to the end of the month, to the end of this month?
We are in the time period in which pre-construction monitoring would need to start taking place.
I understand that. I'm just asking y'all if you could pull a rabbit out of your hat.
Well, there's a man that's 5 feet away from you that looks like he's anxious to get to the microphone.
Oh, I'll be sitting down.
But Rich can do about anything.
I can do almost anything, but this is one of those things where we're up against a rock and a hard place. We're not going to be able to get the pre-construction monitoring done because it takes a lot of effort because you have to get into the water. If the water's not clear, you can't get it done.
Right.
We all know what the seas are doing right now. It's not clear. So we've got to get into there. We've got to do some monitoring. And we're not going to be able to make it. We could give, Mr. DeMuth the rest of the season to go ahead and get easements, and then we just try to hopefully he can get it and pull the trigger in 2024, 2025. But I'm reluctant to recommend to the board for you to spend $250,000 and then we can't move forward. It's just another $250,000 down the drain. We're going to have to address with FEMA, will they extend it? I also want to point out that with the Beach and Shores option, if we change the purview of what the project is, FEMA is going to reduce our funding or not fund us at all. I don't know yet. I have to have that conversation, or we have to have that conversation with FEMA. Remember, we got the money from FEMA based on X, boundaries from here to there. FEMA's going to look at it, okay, now you don't want to do X, you want to do from Y to Z. Well, now, okay, we're going to have to reevaluate our PW, and we all know that, well, staff knows it takes a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years to get PWs written when we just start, after a hurricane. So there's a lot going on right now. So we can get Mr. DeMuth to get the easements, that'd be awesome. It really would be. It would help us out. We can look at, I would recommend that we spend the 10 grand and have our consultant look at it. Can we change the boundaries? Will it be feasible? Will it last more than 5 years? Don't know. 5 years is the cutoff for being able to use optional sales tax to be able to do this if we need the extra funding. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. And Eric's done a fabulous job with everything that he's doing, and we're going to continue to move forward with that. But there's a lot of things that are going on, and we have to all remember that we reduced the scope of work. We still can't get the sand to the beach from the landward side. We have no public access. We're gonna have to pump it, and that's gonna be costly. Now, we may be able to find a piece of vacant property, and we're still looking. I have actually seen one that we're reaching out to the property owner, but unfortunately, he's in a building permit process. So I don't know if that's gonna happen. So that's where we're at. It's just a little bit more information than Eric had. He's been dealing with the day-to-day operational
Yes,
stuff.
and thank you for that. So one is out. I mean, that's, Mr. Chairman, so you're saying that if you had the capacity to move forward a vote, which you don't, you would be going with the 3B with the Demuth factor as well?
That's what I would like to do, but I'm not.
But now that
Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not willing to spend $250,000. I'm willing to spend.
No, that doesn't cost us $250, right? The 3B?
It's
Would-
10 grand to be
That's
able to.
10 grand.
Feasibility study to see if we can change the design.
If we could change,
250 is for the pre-construction monitoring.
and this is what the Beaches and Shores Committee recommended, and then we couple that with the, what Doug DeMuth has suggested to incorporate that, which you embrace, and you feel that we can go on that path and hopefully gain a little bit more real estate to work with.
My recommendation is we go with option 3 and let Mr. DeMuth go, give him 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. We're not going to be able to make construction if we don't pull the pre-construction monitoring right now.
And
That's where we're at, unfortunately.
And not to, but then it delays this to 2004 on a project that we have not been able to do for a few years because of a lack of accessibility. And this gives an option of accessibility or the likelihood for something to occur with Doug working his end with staff and with the community. And we can also continue having the project with the consultant's input on impact.
That would, and no matter what, we wouldn't be able to go to construction until 2024, just as long as you understand that.
Mr. Chairman, could I say so moved?
Let me
Clarify, that
let me-
was
before you
amended
do,
option
Mr. Moss
3,
had a question.
not option
Yes.
3.
Option 3.
Amended option 3.
Amended option 3, yes. Beach and
Yes.
Shores amended option 3.
Go ahead, then
Amended
we'll
option
come back.
3 with the
That's all right.
Demuth factor.
Okay, I had several questions, and I'm not sure I'm addressing them to the right party now, but I'll ask them. With the 90% targeted acceptance, what is that based on? I mean, is that a number, it can be lower, and, everything will still work out all right? I mean, we were, 3 of us weren't here back in July of 2020 when the 90% was voted upon.
90% was a number we settled on for a viable project. If you have less than 90%, 89 for sector, I think it was 89, we're 88 for sector 3 and 87 for sector 5, somewhere in the 85 to 90 range, 85 to 100 range percentage, then your project may not be viable. FEMA evaluates a project as being in totality, and they look at the viability. If we go to FEMA and say, here it is, but we only did 60% of the project, FEMA may say, we're not giving you the money, you didn't make a viable beach project that's going to protect the beaches. We've had these conversations with the FEMA before. And the 90 was a nice round number, but it can be, like I said, in sectors 3 and 5, we reduced it a little bit, a few easements. Hey, if that's the case, and FEMA didn't say nothing. If we go to 67% and we don't do a bunch of
low.
right now, and the way FEMA's very smart when it comes to how beaches work, and they know that this one's a feeder beach, I would be concerned that they say, well, you didn't build the project in its totality, you only built a portion of it, it's not gonna last, we're not gonna fund it.
Okay.
We can have that conversation with them again, but we've had it a couple of times already.
So in your opinion, then, what is the lowest that number could be, the acceptance rate?
For the beach, the way it is right now, in the monuments, the parameters of the beach, 85 is a good number I think we could live with.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have is just on the easements, and maybe that's best directed to Mr. DeMuth. Is there anything that we need to revise? Are we going to be using the same easements? Because we haven't had much luck with them.
I worked on that for many times. I mean, I've heard some people say in Sector 7, why can't it just say the length of the project in one sentence and leave it at that? Others have said different things. I think what Dylan and I worked out, and Mr. Broad may be able to chime in this, because I think Bill may have wrote the first one. But I think that I feel what we have is sufficient and very simple. And I don't see why anybody, me personally, why anybody would sign it. I think a lot of this has to do with just rumor and speculation for people, that they think whatever they sign by the county, that we're going to take it over and it's not going to be their property anymore, or there's going to be 1,000 sunbathers on their beach. I don't know. There's various reasons. And, you know, I don't know if we need to go into all that. But I don't think it can be any simpler. I mean, I
Well,
really don't even want an opening suggestion, because I think we fought that battle.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you for your work on that. There's only a single point, and that is the length of time that the easement is granted. And as I understood it, that was the issue originally, and maybe it's changed since then.
To answer that too, we've had people to say they're okay with it. We've had 20 years mentioned. We've had 15 years mentioned. We've had 5 years mentioned. We had the length of the project. When the project, just I'll sign this easement for the time that they're 30 days or whatever they're working out on the project. So it's been whatever. I don't know whatever's acceptable. We came with the conclusion because based on other easements that people signed, that it runs with the land. You could interpret that as perpetual, all you want, I guess. It'd probably be correct, but that's the standard easement language in most easements that require that. Do we continually work on your property, say like FP&L would or Comcast or AT&T would? It seems that way anymore with all the storms we get, but I don't know. I don't feel there's any need to change the easements. That's just my opinion. If somebody wants to change it, you're more than welcome. I'll give you all the records and y'all can have them and go from there.
Thank you.
So, Commissioner Laura?
Susan, you want?
Are you?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, I'll go after you, it's fine.
Mr. Chair, thank you. A couple questions. I read the word may a couple times about the insurance on Sector 7, that insurance may be able to be moved. Have we ever done that before with respect to the insurance?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm just, that is, it is a item to consider, that the funding that has been received for Sector 7 may need to be reallocated to Sectors 3 and 5, which then may reduce the FEMA funding we would receive.
Right. May or may not.
Exactly. I'm just tossing it out there. I think we're kind of in uncharted territory with some of these items.
Gotcha.
So,
the second item is, I heard that if we started the pre-construction today, as in urgency on May 2nd, that we still would have a problem. And also heard that it's probably not a good idea to do it simultaneously as we're waiting on these easements. I'm out with the 250,000. That doesn't make sense. The second thing is, we're in the month of May. We've got a track history of not obtaining these easements. A lot of our friends in that sector are probably not in town. So we've been accused before of kicking the can on a lot of different issues from this dais. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but our track history is that we probably won't get those easements in the next 30 days. And I applaud Mr. DeMuth for moving forward with that, going door to door and making sure, or attempting to do that. But this board has to be realistic, and we've tried this for years.
Yes.
So for that, I'm opposed to 3.
Any other comments, Commissioner Adam?
I agree with Commissioner Lohr, but I do have a couple of questions or comments, I guess. So if you were to get all the easements that are pending or you haven't heard back from, you still have 18% that have flat out denied. So you're going to have to get some of those denials to reconsider, because that 18% puts you at 82%. And, you know, I would agree, I don't know how likely that is. I have some concerns about redesigning it, because will that impact the permit? Because the permit is currently based on the design.
the permit should be valid as long as we work within the constraints of the permit. So like I say, our permit is there. We can fill less than the permit is, but then that's where the feasibility, it's where the $10,000 in a feasibility is. Is it worth, placing X amount of sand if like as Rich was saying, we're supposed to place Y and we're only placing X? Is it a feasible project at that point?
And the project currently is based on a feeder beach scenario to help extend the life of that project and to try to kind of maximize the limited resources that we have available.
Correct.
So redesigning that would be a completely different project and would probably up that cost significantly, I would think.
As far as redesign, I mean, if we were working within the constraints of the permit, which that $10,000 feasibility would be working within the constraints of the permit, our consultant would do some additional empirical modeling to determine, if this were to happen, what would the project longevity be? What can we do to maximize a project that would potentially exclude a certain area or something? So that's what that $10,000 would afford us the opportunity to see what can he present to us within the constraints of our permit to make it a workable project with the factors that we have, the easements as well as the near shore hard bottom constraints. So
what who's our consultant?
it's Coastal Tech, a local firm.
Okay. But my bigger question is, we have a beach management plan, correct? And is there a priority project list? I know this is based on an emergency, but we do have a priority project list that we accrue funding for, correct?
We have a list of recommended projects in the beach preservation plan. Sector 7 was identified as a recommended project back in the 2020 timeframe. So,
okay. And how long does it take for us to accrue dollars to do a project if we don't have FEMA and DEP dollars?
that one I would have to defer the answer to someone else. I honestly could not tell you. I'm working within the aspects of the funding I have available to us now, knowing that, as identified in the agenda, in previous agendas, anything that is not picked up by either the FEMA or any other governmental funding or the DEP funding would need to be funded by the county.
Okay.
So,
Kristen, do you know how long it takes to accrue? Because we accrue through tourist tax, correct?
Optional as well.
And optional?
And that
Kristen
insurance
Daniels,
is what
Budget Director. We do, but there's about 10 million in the fund after we get paid back from FEMA. But depending on if you do Sector 4 and 5 and 3, we could have nothing.
Right. That was my concern. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Those were just my questions and comments, but I still have agree with Commissioner Lohr. I think, I don't know how much longer we can continue.
I think we said that last meeting as well.
Yeah, we did.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Fleischer.
As well pointed out, this has been a number of years, and we haven't been able to move off the line. With consultant input and extending this 30 days, after we've traveled this course several years, I think this is like a one-yard move. Not a huge delay, not scrubbing the launch. It's just moving a little bit and seeing if there's one final effort to knock one or two, perhaps three of these landowners into compliance of the request and make it happen. I really don't think it's a big delay. It's not, we've done this long enough. I mean, you're like, first and goal. You could be. It may just take a little bit more effort. Maybe the delivery of the request was not clear to them. Maybe there was some biasness about the action, the resistance.
Hard to tell.
Well, Mr. Chair, the reality is these homeowners have gotten several correspondence from this body, either written, telephone calls, emails, what have you. And if it's like most of us, the next time we get something from the county, they're going to say, oh, they're at it again. And again, I don't mean to be pessimistic, but how many easements would we have to have?
Like I said, targeting the 90%.
that's-
We are missing 26 at this point.
Right.
I mean,
Right, so what are the
Oh, we-
chances of getting 26 of these after we've already
We
entertained?
don't need 26.
How many more do we need?
Well,
15.
yeah, probably in that ballpark. I don't have my calculator here, so I'm sorry, I just didn't bring that. So, I mean, as Commissioner Adams had said too, though, we are at 18% denial at this point. So, and that's how many properties?
That's 15 have denied flat out, so you would still need some of them to reconsider and change the flat out no to a yes in order to even make your 85%, because you're sitting at 82% with the denials if everybody else sends something back. And 11 of those are 11 more you haven't had any response from.
So we would need approximately 15 would put us in the mid-80s at that point. So, and as you had identified, there's 15 denied. And the county staff does still reach out to those properties, not the property owners that have denied, but to those properties. And we do monitor the property appraiser's website. If there is a transfer of property, we do reach out to the new owners, whether they denied or pending in the past, just as a good faith effort to let them know of a potential project, as well as the request for an easement in order to move the project forward. So.
Commissioner Laura, I agree with you. Nobody's been at the forefront of this like myself. I'm not so sure that we can get these easements. I'm not either, but it's kind of like it must be the firefighter in me that just, until you've completely beat me down and I can't go any further, I'm willing to try anything at the last minute. And I would agree with Commissioner Fleischer on this. I think it's worth a small gesture, and it's worth one last shot. And after that, and you've heard me say this before, if it wasn't approved, then we'll just move on to the next storm. When the next storm comes through and Sector 7 is deemed critically eroded, if we don't get the easements, we're going to go through the same process again. So.
And, Mr. Chair, I think I like the idea, too, that it's not just another correspondence going out from the county. There's a personal touch involved, and appreciate Mr. DeMuth's efforts as well as your own.
What's the option? Do nothing? Leave the sand go? Let the sand erode?
Staff wants an option. If you want to make a motion.
Let the sand erode further?
Then we'll go.
And then nobody has anything to complain about because we only need access to the water. So I feel that your intention in working with the Beach and Shores and our recent information is still the best option, which is 3B with the DeBooth factor.
So, Mr. Chair?
I'll take that as a motion.
Yes.
I'll
I
second
have a
it.
motion by Commissioner Fleischer,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Moss to accept Beach and Shores amended option 3 with the, we'll call it the DeMuth factor. And I'm sorry?
So just to be clear, Eric, in addition to the spending the $10,000, there's two things that have to happen. One, we need the easements, and then secondly, we need the extension.
Correct. And then
So there's two,
construction
so
would still be in the November 2024.
24 timeline. Just so we're clear that it's,
Well, if I remember, when we got this other easement, we didn't get it in, they took a while to get it back. We're giving Mr. DeMuth 30 days to get easements. If he can come back and get easements, and they see we've got, let's hope, and I'm wishful thinking here, let's hope that we have 85%. Maybe they'll say, okay, yeah, okay, we can give you all another extension, because now you got real easements. I mean,
They do ask on
I'm
our
reaching
bi-weekly
deep
phone
here,
calls,
but I'm reaching
for
deep.
updates.
We are reaching, and mathematically, it's a big challenge for Mr. DeMuth and anybody involved with this at this point. But is it possible? Yes. Probable?
Right.
I got to reserve that.
Totally agree.
And I agree. I agree. This is an uphill battle. But if you have somebody willing to do it,
This is the Hail Mary pass.
yeah.
Without a doubt. And I mean, I thought I was done with it already, but I'm willing to throw a Hail Mary pass. That's just me. So I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, a second by Commissioner Moss. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion?
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, Eric contacted the South Beach Property Owners Association when you started this a long time ago. And we did a poll because a lot of these people in Sector 7 are our members in communities and also individuals. And this became quite personal to me because all of the Sector 7 sand is washed away onto our Sector 8 property south of Round Island Park. So we're in direct contact with them. I haven't met Mr. DeMuth before. We just met in the lobby a couple of minutes ago and introduced ourselves concerning the code enforcement. But I think Mr. DeMuth needs to explain to us where he thinks, what is the grounding and basis of this, that he thinks he can get the extra 10 or 12 or 13 or 14 easements, because we've been in touch with our constituents and our members in our communities. And in fact, they've been in contact with us. And as far as I can tell you and report to this committee, they are more entrenched against this than they've ever been, because of the continual iterations and changing and all the rest of it, and the perception that there is something that is not being disclosed to them. And I just think that if you're going to go and spend $10,000, $12,000, I think you're going on a fool's errand. I think Mr. DeMuth has to be transparent on us on what is the basis and grounding, or are we talking to the same people? Because we've got the list of the denials, we've got the list of the non-respondents, and we are just seeing that they are actually going in the opposite direction because of all the iterations and pressure. So I think full disclosure in this case, I just don't think that there is any chance that this is going to happen. But maybe he knows something that I don't. We've only been there 32 years, as these have been an organization. As an organization, we've been in contact with these people. So I'd like to know where, on what basis you feel optimistic.
Dr. Conway, I hear you loud and clear. I can't really make an argument. Mr. DeMuth.
I'm Doug DeMuth with the Loose Coalition of Homeowners Associations of Indian River County in South Beach. And we represent about 70% of the homeowners in that area right now. The basis on which we're coming forward to ask you for this opportunity is that we have contacted a number of folks, particularly in the South, who had an opposition to the perpetual nature of the easement. Now that it has been reconstructed, and the other thing they had an issue with was that there was no personal contact involved. It was just a letter sent to them. They didn't know anything about it. They talk to their lawyers and whatever, and basically get the standard don't do anything. There are a number of folks down there who have not responded. So what we do have is we have the phone numbers, we have the names, we have the addresses of those folks who have not responded or have turned it down for the first time. With Cheryl Gershner, who is one of those people who has turned it down. She's a real estate agent down in that area. With Lori Barkhorn, who knows a couple of folks down there who we've already talked with in the past. We believe we have an opportunity. Again, this is where we're going to have to ignore the Northern 9 folks who have rejected this thing, because they're just not going to ever allow any sand to be put on their beaches and destroy the serenity that they currently have. So what we're talking about is we're talking about the people from R99 South, and we think we have an opportunity to go and get those easements. So again, it would be a personal touch. It would be knocking on doors. It would be phone calls. It would be whatever it is, whatever it takes. So that's the basis of what we're attempting to do. So and that would hopefully provide the maintenance to this 2.2 mile area of beach. I'd also suggest that it encompasses half a mile into Sector 8, which is also part of this entire contiguity of critically eroded beach that FDEP has identified. We think we can make some progress. So that's the basis of what we're looking to, on which we're suggesting acting. I've never had the opportunity to meet Mr. Conway before. What I do know is that our HOA and a number of other HOAs have pulled out of his organization in the past because of concerns, let's put it that way, about the way that organization was moving forward. And so we have, as I said, formed a loose coalition of homeowners associations that represents about 70% of the folks out in that area. And so I'm speaking for them and with them. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, when will the 30 days start? Number one.
30 days from right now.
30 days from right now. So we have residents that obviously have some valuable property, more than likely are going to want to speak with their attorneys. And by June 2nd, you think we're going to have signed easements? Okay.
Yes. Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Moss. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Was that a yes by you?
Said opposed.
You were opposed?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Motion passes 3-2 with Commissioner Lohr and Commissioner Adams voting on the nay. Thank you. All right, moving on to utilities services. 12H1, North Sebastian Septic to Sewer and Water Project Phase 2, Resolution 4. Mr. Liskey.
Commissioner Sean Leaskey, Utilities Director. I do have a short presentation. You do have a decision to make at the end of this, but hopefully it won't be as complicated as that one. So we'll kind of get just moving along really quickly on here. What we're talking about today is North County Septic to Sewer Resolution 4. The project has kind of drawn to conclusion, and so we're bringing Resolution 4 to actually deal with the final payment and start the actual assessment of this project. So we're going to move to the next slide. Just again to kind of acquaint everybody where we're talking about the North County Septic to Sewer project. It encompasses, the majority of it is in the Roseland community. Kind of northern part is Earth Dune Heights, and then we have Ruffner Lane kind of over towards the lagoon side of the project. So this includes all of those sections of the project. In this, we have a total of 213 parcels that were part of the project. What we're talking about today is just the water assessment part of that, which is 161 properties. And the difference there is some of those parcels were sewer only, some of them were water and sewer, some of them were water only. And so the difference between that is we have about 161 other properties that prior to this project did not have water, so they're part of the water assessment. The total part of the assessment, or the total assessment for the water portion, was $361,889.36, and that was determined under resolution of 1 and 2. When you divide that by 161, you come up with a total assessment for each parcel or property at $2,247.16. And so the resolution on 2022-104 that was approved in December of 2022 is actually giving us the authority to put this on the tax roll. So this assessment will be going on the tax roll starting next year, and will be going forward for 10 years from that point. Again, kind of wanted to just again mention that what we're talking about is the county or the public side of this, and that's what is being assessed for the homeowners, is the actual county, the installation of the county water line that goes through that area, and the water main and the water meter. So that's when we talk about the assessment, they're getting assessed for that portion. There's still a responsibility for the homeowners to do that water lateral from that water meter to the house. It's their responsibility to actually have that installed, but the assessment is just for the public side. Next slide. This is just a comparison. The reason I'm bringing this up is when this project started and when we went through resolution 1 and 2, which was done in 2020, the interest rate at the time was 3.25. January at this year, the commission did vote to increase the interest rate to 7.5. And so while we're closing this project through resolution 4 during this year, recognize that there was a difference, and significant difference to the homeowner between that 3.25 and 7.5% interest rate. If you look at the total at the bottom and kind of a summary on the next slide, of that at 10 years at 3.25, the total payment they will have over those 10 years equals about $2,649.58, or an interest of $401.82. At 7.5% during that same time period, we're looking at a cost closer to a little over $3,000, at an interest of almost $1,000. And so the difference between those two interest rates is pretty significant over those 10 years of 525.45 for each of those homeowners. There is an option within the resolution that homeowners, if they elect in the next 90 days from today, if they pay it in full, obviously it's interest-free. So they wouldn't pay any interest if they pay within the next 90 days. From that point on, interest starts to accrue. Due to the fact that the project was initiated when the interest rate was lower, we are recommending that the board consider the 3.25 as the APR, annual percentage rate, for the assessment. And so the decision really today is do you go with the 3.25 or do you go with the 7.5 for the assessment? And I'll answer any questions at this point.
Vice Chairman?
Mr. Chair, this project has been ongoing through multiple utilities directors and multiple commissions, and we are to the point where it's almost done. I think we should honor what we told the residents when we started this originally and go with a 3.25%, which I'll be happy to motion approval for. But really and truly, the interest, we should not be here to kind of make money off of the residents, and I would love to bring this project to completion, and I think 3.25 is where it needs to be.
I'll second that.
Be glad to second that.
Oh, okay.
Commissioners, any questions? You have a question? Any questions? Any questions?
Yeah.
All right, I have a motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by myself. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Huh, guess not. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you,
Mr.
Commissioner.
Lister.
And just real quick, too, I just wanted to say thanks to the staff, and Commissioner Adams is right. This project has been ongoing for a long time. There's been a lot of challenges associated with the project. I really want to commend staff. I want to commend Cindy and her staff for all the efforts they've done on kind of keeping this on track and getting grants to help fund the project. It's been a long time coming. Been a lot of work and a lot of effort, but just really want to say thanks to all the staff for their hard work throughout this. So,
Agreed, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, Commissioners, moving on to special district and boards. Nothing under emergency services. We'll move to B and the solid waste disposal district. 15B1, approval for continued rental of frac tanks and equipment for leachate disposal.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Moss.
Actually, I think it was the other way around.
I think that's what I heard. Is that what I heard? No?
I seconded.
You seconded it? Oh, okay. Well, who moved it? Commissioner Fleischer? Okay, well, let's redo this. Tell you, it's rough today. A motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams. Anybody from the public wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. 15B2, final pay to Geosyntec for work order number 16, 1 year of groundwater monitoring, reporting, and related consulting services at the South Gifford Road landfill.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Adams, second by Commissioner Fleischer. Anybody wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. 15B3, final pay to Geosyntec for work order number 13, 2020-21, Title V, Air Operation Permit Renewal Application.
Second. Second.
Who motion? You did? You gotta talk loud sitting way down there. Motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Adams. Anybody wish to comment on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Guess what? We made it to the end. The next meeting will be May 16th, 2023. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you for your time.